Chapter 1168. Stepping on Xiaopi, Xiaobai shot out like a lightning bolt, dashing toward the crowd. Holding the war god's stick with one hand, lightning arcs moved on the surface of the stick. Soon, they went up the stick to his arm. Xiaobai's body condensed a thick murderous aura. His eyes turned scarlet, as if there were flames burning in them. It was very terrifying. Like a volcano erupting, sparks falling from the sky. In an instant, Xiaobai smashed into the crowd. A group of nether prison experts roared, attacking Xiaobai. All kinds of nether energy condensed into energy attacks, attacking Xiaobai as if they wanted to smash him into pieces in an instant. This was a puppet. However, no one dared to look down on any puppet. Nether prison had 9 great clans. There was the Giant Demon Clan, the 9 Revolution Nether Chef Clan, the Sword Demon Clan, and so on. Among them, there was also a clan that specialized in puppet. Their puppets were called Nether Puppeteers. The members of this clan were called Nether Puppeteers. They were good at using all kinds of heavenly ingredients and earthly treasures to make puppets. There were even some who took the unorthodox path, digging out the tombs of ancient experts and digging out their corpses to make nether puppets. According to their secret technique, the older the corpse, the stronger the nether puppeteers would be. There was a period of time when the nether puppeteers dominated the nether prison. Hence, no nether prison expert would look down on any puppet, even if it wasn't a nether puppet. Of course, whether they looked down on it or not, it didn't make any difference to Xiaobai. What Xiaobai wanted to do was to kill. Because Bufang had said, this time, he wouldn't strip people's clothes, only kill. His scarlet eyes were like those of a wild beast. He waved the war god's stick, creating thousands of stick shadows. Each shadow was wrapped with terrifying lightning. Boom! Boom! The weaker nether prison experts were directly swept by the stick, and their bodies exploded. Only 9-star true Immortal Realm experts could resist a few sticks. Xiaobai's improvement this time was huge. Of course, because Bufang's cultivation had improved, Xiaobai's combat power had also skyrocketed. As Bufang's strength grew, the relationship between Xiaobai's battle prowess and Bufang's cultivation became more and more blurred. However, the improvement of Bufang's strength would still subtly enhance Xiaobai's battle prowess. This was a faintly discernible and mysterious relationship. The war god's stick smashed on the ground. He bent it suddenly. Then, Xiaobai's body shot out like a cannonball, turning into a shooting star. It came crashing down. His fan-like palm suddenly changed. In the next moment it turned into a huge cannon barrel. Terrifying energy condensed in the cannon barrel. Lightning arcs scuttled about, and the azure radiance was dazzling and eye-catching. Then, with a bang, it shot out. Lightning arcs shot out and smashed down with a sizzling sound. Several nether prison experts were blasted into pieces. Xiaobai, who had activated his killing mode, was like a demon walking out of the abyss. Evil creature! A loud roar rang out. A half-step saint stepped on the ground, arriving in a flash. A powerful punch smashed toward Xiaobai. Xiaobai held the war god's stick with one hand, twirled it, and pointed it toward the sky. Boom! The half-step saint's punch collided with Xiaobai, instantly causing a shockwave. In the distance, the nether prison experts crazily rushed over. Xiaobai's mechanical eyes flashed. The metal wings on his back flapped. Instantly, tens of thousands of swords shot out from the metal wings. With a tearing sound, they flew everywhere, constantly tearing the bodies of the nether prison experts. Puffing sounds rang out incessantly. Blood mist burst from the chests of the nether prison experts, one after another. The current Xiaobai was a great killing machine. He swung the war god's stick. He shot out and charged towards the crowd that was pouncing towards him. Meanwhile, Xiaobai's mechanical eyes focused. He raised his huge fist and smashed it toward the half-step saint. A man and a puppet fought fiercely in midair. It was an undisguised melee. Unlike Bufang's attack, Xiao Bai and the nether prison half-step saint both chose close-range attacks instead of long-range bombardment. Unlike Bufang, who could throw a few beef meatballs from a distance and blow the enemy to death, Xiao Bai was very agile. Whitey was very agile. Although it looked bloated, it was not weaker than the nether prison half-step saint in a fight. The fists collided with the surfaces of the fist. The half-step saint's pupils constricted. With a long roar, his chi and blood surged like thunder and waves. Boom! The man and the puppet exchanged several punches in a row, causing the ground to explode. Xiao Bai took a step back, and the ground caved in. The half-step saint also rolled over and landed on the ground. The next moment, he leaped up again like a dragon and charged toward Xiao Bai. His leg swept out, and it seemed as if it could collapse mountains and rivers. This leg contained terrifying nether energy, causing it to seem as if it had turned into a sharp blade. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes buzzed, and his arm spun. Then, it turned into a chopper. The chopper slashed up and collided with the half-step saint's leg. Sparks flew in all directions, and a deafening clang rang out. Clang! 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 Xiao Bai's slash was so fast that it was almost impossible to see the shadow of the knife. On the other hand, the half-step saint, who was obviously very good at melee combat, was not weaker than Xiao Bai. The two were locked in a fierce battle. After the chopper came the bombardment of fists. Elbows, fists, whipping legs, all kinds of melee combat methods were used. Boom! The half-step saint's elbow smashed hard on Xiao Bai's chest, crushing Xiao Bai and throwing him to the ground like a cannonball. The surrounding nether prison experts all cheered. The half-step saint stood proudly in the sky, grinning and panting violently. His hair stuck in the void like steel needles. All of a sudden, Xiao Bai leaped up from the rubble. He suddenly appeared in front of the half-saint, and then his huge hands wrapped around the half-saint's head. Then, he raised his knee and made an intimate contact with the half-step saint's face. There seemed to be a sound of bones breaking. The half-step saint's blood spilled into the sky as he howled miserably. His miserable voice made many people's scalps go numb. Boom! Boom! The half-step saint waved his fists furiously. His punches seemed to send out blasts in the void as they kept hitting Xiao Bai's body. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes remained unchanged. The knee kept hitting the half-step saint's face until it was crooked. He grabbed the half-step saint's head with one hand. Whitey grabbed the latter and flung him to the ground. With a bang, the ground caved in. The half-step saint coughed up blood, and his eyes showed a fierce look. He had wanted to fight hand-to-hand, but he didn't expect that he would be almost killed by this puppet. He wiped his bloodied face. The half-step saint's eyes became very ferocious. He jerked his hands. In the next moment, numerous sharp daggers appeared around him. "You forced me to do this. I'm going to tear this thing of yours apart," the half-step saint roared. Then, one dagger after another shot out. They seemed to turn into long dragons, spiraling up into the sky and instantly surrounding Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai's eyes froze. The next moment, the scarlet in his eyes became even more intense. At the same time, many small holes opened on his back. All of a sudden, sparks burst out of the holes. Swish, white leap. Xiao Bai's mechanical voice rang out. The next moment, he charged forward, drawing an arc in the air and heading toward the half-step saint. The moment Xiao Bai shot out, everything around him seemed to become still. He jumped as if he had teleported. Boom! Numerous daggers transformed into a long dragon that charged forward, but all of them missed their target. The half-step saint's eyes shrank. The next moment, he sucked in a breath of cold air. He found that the puppet was in front of him, less than an inch away from him. Boom! The fan-like palm suddenly rose and hit the half-step saint's chin. The half-step saint's pupils shrank, and his body was uncontrollably sent flying up into the sky. A loud boom rang out. Blue sparks shot out of the holes on Xiao Bai's back, producing a huge force that rippled the ground. The next moment, Xiao Bai was flying parallel to the half-step saint. The half-step saint turned his head with difficulty. Through his blood-covered eyes, he saw Xiao Bai's mechanical gaze. Xiao Bai raised his hand and slapped him. Boom! The half-step saint was sent flying. Xiao Bai jumped again, appearing at the place where the half-step saint was sent flying, and threw another punch. The half-step saint flew backward again, but Xiao Bai jumped again, sending him flying back. The half-step saint was extremely aggrieved. He didn't even have the chance to use the power to control the will of the Great Path, and he was being abused by a puppet. This puppet, it was too violent. All the bones in his body felt like they were about to shatter, and his body was covered in cracks. The half-step saint was already dumbfounded. Blood sprayed in the sky. After a fierce beating and continuous jumping, the blue sparks on Xiao Bai's back dimmed, losing their power. Xiao Bai stretched out his fan-like palms and grabbed the half-step saint's arms. Then, he jumped up and stepped on the half-step saint's back as if he was stepping on a shrimp. He pressed his palm on the half-step saint's head. Then, he flew toward the ground like a shooting star. The half-step saint opened his eyes with difficulty and looked at the ground that was getting bigger and bigger. His body and mind were enveloped by a chill, no. A miserable howl rang out. Xiao Bai stepped on the half-step saint and smashed him deep into the ground. Boom! It was like a cannonball crashing down. The entire ground exploded. Sand flew everywhere, and the rate at which the fissures accelerated. Gravel rose into the air. Smoke and dust billowed. Everyone was silent. Rumble. Gravel rolled down. Amidst the smoke and dust, a chubby figure slowly walked out. He raised his hand and a suction force burst out. In the distance, the war god's stick seemed to turn into a thunderbolt, flying over. Xiao Bai held it in his hand, both ends of the stick still shaking. The nether prison experts sucked in a cold breath, chills filling their bodies. On the other side, Bu Fang also withdrew his gaze. After this evolution, Xiao Bai didn't disappoint him. He had become much stronger. Roar! His mind returned. Bu Fang's eyes turned to the giant devil in the distance. He didn't know when the giant devil had shifted his target to him. A roar rang out, and a cannonball condensed from monstrous nether energy with a terrible aura shot toward him. This giant devil was a little saint. Although in Bu Fang's perception, this giant demon's aura was much weaker than the city lord of Goddess City or the nether prison sword demon he met on God Vanishing Mountain. It was even weaker than the six-tailed fox and the nine-tailed fox. This giant devil must have just entered the little saint realm. However, even if he had just become a little saint, he was still a little saint. The threat of explosive meatballs to the little saint was basically negligible. The only thing that could threaten the little saint was probably the perishing pot. He watched as the nether chi cannonballs bombarded him. As the gale approached, it caused his clothes to flutter violently. Chapter 1169. Is this guy crazy? On the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm, Bu Fang's appearance attracted everyone's attention. He used the fire net to deflect the little saint's attack. Then, he dashed towards the little saint's location without flinching. What was he going to do? Was he going to fight with the little saint? But Bu Fang was just a 9-star true immortal realm expert. Realm Lord Dit was shocked by Bu Fang's thunderous moves. However, the moment Bu Fang dashed out, he came to his senses. He hurriedly opened his mouth to warn Bu Fang. He didn't want Bu Fang to be smashed to death by the giant devil's fist. That was a little saint. Under normal circumstances, it should be a 1-revolution little saint. The little saint was divided into 9 revolutions. The difference between each revolution was huge. That was the difference in controlling the will of the heavenly way. However, even if the giant devil in front of him was just a 1-revolution little saint, it wasn't something that Bu Fang could deal with. The decline of the Heaven Chief Realm had caused all the resources of the Heaven Chief Realm to be plundered by the Heaven Tree. However, it still couldn't stop the Heaven Tree from withering. Realm Lord Dit originally had the chance to break through to the little saint. However, because of the lack of resources, he couldn't break through. Now, he had no choice but to break through. However, this had also accelerated the collapse of the Heaven Tree. If Bufang had come back a little later, the entire Heaven Chief realm would have collapsed. Realm Lord Dit's body emitted golden light. His figure flashed, wanting to help Bufang. However, just as he moved, the giant devil's fist suddenly moved horizontally, smashing towards him. Realm Lord Dit didn't expect that. He hurriedly urged his immortal energy to resist. Bang! His entire body was sent flying like a cannonball, crashing into the distance and creating a huge crater in the ground. Bufang glanced at Realm Lord Dit, who was sent flying, and let out a sigh of relief. With a flap of the flaming wings on his back, he dashed forward once more, closing in on the giant demon in an instant. The giant demon was truly enormous. It was like a mountain that was hundreds of feet tall. He opened his mouth and let out a wild roar, as if he was going to set off a gale. Boom! The giant devil waved his hand, slapping away the terrifying cannonball that Bufang had rebounded. Although he had fired the cannonball himself, it posed no threat to him. It was you, human, who blew up my arm. You must die. When the giant demon sensed the familiar aura on Bufang's body, he was instantly enraged. Hot air even gushed out of his nostrils. Waving his giant palm, he swatted at Bufang in the sky. He wanted to slap Bufang to death with just one slap. Bufang hovered in the sky. He held Little Hu in his arms. This little fellow had been burping non-stop. It was obvious that Bufang had fed her too much. Bufang rubbed Little Hu's head, his eyes focused. He wasn't afraid of the giant devil's pressure. With the system, Bufang wasn't afraid of the so-called pressure at all. His figure flashed. A moment later, he disappeared from his spot. He dodged the giant devil's slap. Little Hu, it's up to you now. Fire. Little Hu was the gift that Bufang had prepared for the giant devil. Little Hu couldn't wait any longer. After burping, she opened her mouth. Her foxtail kept wagging. Then, a golden light gathered in her mouth. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The golden light shot out like a shooting star, dragging a golden tail behind it. In an instant it sped over and hit the giant devil's arm. Boom! An explosion rang out. The giant devil's arm was blown up, and sparks flew everywhere. A big hole was blasted open. A piece of his green skin was gone. Bufang's eyes lit up. This giant devil's cultivation base was much weaker than the little saint of the Sword Demon clan he had met in God Vanishing Mountain. At least, in terms of defense, they weren't on the same level. Boom! 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 Once Little Hu started firing, she couldn't stop. Golden flames kept surging in her mouth. Golden cannonballs shot out of her mouth, dragging golden tails behind them as they bombarded the giant devil's body. Boom! Boom! Explosions rang out. The giant devil howled miserably. One energy cannon couldn't hurt him, but a barrage of energy cannons was enough to blast his body full of holes. After all, he was just a little saint. His fleshly body hadn't been cultivated to an invincible level. The giant devil kept retreating, raising his hands to cover his body. However, the cannonballs kept falling, smashing the giant devil's flesh and blood. Green blood splattered everywhere. Didn't you want to kill me? Come on. Bufang held Little Hu in his arms, speaking calmly. The giant devil's huge body kept retreating under the bombardment. Everyone was dumbfounded, and their faces were filled with disbelief. In the ruins, Realm Lord Dit got up. Looking at everything in the distance, he sucked in a cold breath. How is this possible? Realm Lord Dit murmured in disbelief. One should know that he was a little saint. Bufang was actually suppressing a little saint? What was that thing in his hand? It looked like a fox that could spit fire. Boom! 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 The sound of explosions rang out unceasingly. The originally violent giant devil was beaten until he was squatting on the ground. Bursting meatballs kept hitting his body. Even a little saint couldn't bear it. The giant devil felt a little sullen. He didn't expect to be suppressed by a 9-star true immortal realm expert. He had almost lost his face as a little saint. His eyes focused. The giant devil punched the ground with both fists. He got up, opened his mouth, and roared at the sky. Roar. The roar was deafening, and waves of air surged. The giant devil leaped up high, and its huge palm slapped toward Bufang's figure. You can still resist? Bufang's eyes focused, furrowing his brows. A moment later, he rubbed Little Hu's head and said, Little Hu, fire faster. Little Hu's eyes lit up. Then, da, 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 da. His head moved up and down faster and faster, spitting out tongues of fire. Streaks of golden light filled the sky and smashed down with a loud rumble. In just a moment, the giant devil was completely covered. The entire 5th layer of the Heaven Chief realm seemed to be shrouded in a violent explosion, shaking unceasingly. The ground was constantly collapsing. Flames rushed to the sky, and a mushroom cloud rose. Whoosh! After a long time, Little Hu no longer spat out fire snake. He opened his mouth, burping. Green smoke curled up and down. Little Hu nodded his head, looking a little confused. His eyes were full of circles. Bufang raised the corner of his mouth, stroking Little Hu's soft hair, then put the latter on his shoulder. He knew that the bursting meatballs Little Hu had eaten should be almost gone. Looking at the distant flames that blotted out the sky, Bufang's face was incomparably cold. Hovering in the void, the shock wave rushed over, blowing his hair and causing it to flutter in the wind. The Nether Prison experts' jaws dropped. They were so shocked that their jaws were about to drop. A little saint was killed just like that? Realm Lord didn't know what to say. This kid Bufang. Where did he find such a fox? Zolords raised his hand, pinching his face, then excitedly waved his thumb and middle finger. Could it be that the Nether Prison's invasion was repelled just like that? Of course, Bufang wasn't as optimistic as them. After all, he was a little saint. How could he be killed so easily? Roar. Indeed, a roar rang out from the mushroom cloud. That giant devil's figure suddenly rose, jumping out of the flames. Waving his fist, he smashed toward Bufang's position. His eyes were scarlet, full of murderous intent. Damn human! The giant devil roared unceasingly, his anger burning. Both his arms were exposed, revealing the bones. Almost all of them were blown up. This time, the giant devil was in a more miserable state. Hence, he was even more furious. Sure enough, he's not dead. Bufang's eyes narrowed. He seemed to have expected this. His mind flickered. Xiaopi turned into a golden beam of light, shooting over. Bufang stepped on Xiaopi, flying backward. The giant devil's fist smashed the ground. With a boom, the ground collapsed. The entire 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm finally fell. It hit the 4th layer of the Heaven Chief Realm, as if the sky was falling and the earth was sinking. The ground of the 4th layer couldn't bear the heavy impact. Creaking sounds rang out and many places cracked. The experts of the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm rose into the sky, unable to stand steadily. The giant devil's eyes were scarlet. No one knew when, but a giant black spear had appeared in his hand. Grabbing the huge spear with his bare arms, the giant devil strode forward, chasing after Bufang. Now, only Bufang was left in his eyes. He just wanted to slap the guy who hurt him to death. Swish! The giant devil swung the spear. The void seemed to be pierced. A terrible whistling sound came. Xiaopi, carrying Bufang, swooped up. The spear brushed past Xiaopi's body and fell to the ground. Bufang's eyes narrowed. A moment later, he gently exhaled. With Xiaopi here, he wasn't worried that the giant devil would catch up with him. He sat down cross-legged. Bufang closed his eyes. After a while, he suddenly opened them. A sharp glint flashed across his eyes. Little Hu, who was lying on Bufang's shoulder, stuck out her tongue. Her eyes lit up, and she straightened her head, looking more spirited. Her fox nose twitched, and her eyes were a little blurred. In Bufang's hand a silvery white lotus pot appeared in front of him. Perishing pot, it appeared. Buzz, the perishing pot floated in Bufang's hand, and a white flame burned under it. Inside the pot, sizzling sounds rang out incessantly. The cabbages inside were rolling, and a rich aroma filled the air. Bufang wasn't in a hurry to throw the pot out. The perishing pot needed to be preheated, and when it was preheated to the extreme, it would be at its strongest. As time went by, the perishing pot was boiling. The soup in the pot was boiling, and the dish was emitting hot steam and a strong aroma. Little Hu craned her head and opened her mouth, which was full of saliva. It was as if she wanted to bury her whole head in the pot. However, Bufang grabbed her head with one hand. "You're too young to eat it." Bufang was seriously exhorting them. Foxy, on the other hand, felt that it was a pity. Her small eyes were filled with a pitiful look, and there seemed to be tears flowing in them. However, she was ignored by Bufang. He didn't let Little Hu eat it because he was protecting her. Her body couldn't bear the power of the perishing pot. A beam of golden light flashed through the void. The giant devil chased after it and sped through the entire fifth layer, causing it to shake constantly. Realm Lord Dit watched from a distance as if he was watching a farce. The surrounding nether prison experts were also a little confused. Buzz, the perishing pot in Bufang's hand, seemed to be shaking, and an invisible wave spread out, causing Bufang's mind to tremble. This was the first time Bufang had used the perishing pot to its full power. The previous 2 times, he didn't use it completely because he had scruples. However, its power was already very terrifying. This time, he planned to use the perishing pot without holding anything back. His spirit sea was boiling. The artifact spirits of the 4 god of cooking sets roared at the same time, pushing Bufang's mental force to its peak. With the release of his divine perception, the mental force around Bufang became as viscous as an ocean. Swoosh! Bufang's eyes lit up. He raised his hand, and the perishing pot floated in the air. Bufang's divine perception was absorbed by the perishing pot like a whale. All of a sudden, the silver perishing pot turned into a blazing white color, shining as brightly as the sun. A terrible wave spread out from it, causing Bufang's mind to tremble slightly. Rumble! The giant demon's wildly running figure came to an abrupt halt. His eyes widened. In the distance, Xiaopi stopped running and hovered in place. Bufang, on the other hand, held the perishing pot with one hand, which was as dazzling as the sun. Everyone's eyes seemed to be attracted by the perishing pot in Bufang's hand. The giant devil's pupils constricted. The next moment, a chill enveloped him. That familiar recipe, that familiar smell, yes, it was that terrible dish full of death and destruction. Sure enough, it's you. He would never forget that disastrous scene last time. The heart-wrenching pain was like a humiliation that he couldn't forget. Grabbing the giant spear, the giant devil threw his head back and let out a long roar that seemed to disperse the clouds. The next moment, he held the spear, ran a little, rushed forward, and swung it. The spear turned into a pitch-black lightning bolt and shot toward the perishing pot. Go to hell. I won't fall into the same trap twice. The giant devil roared, his eyes filled with violence. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Standing on Xiaopi's back, Bufang's face was slightly pale. His divine perception was almost exhausted, which pushed the perishing pot's power to the extreme. The incandescent light was as dazzling as the sun. The aura of destruction in it made Bufang's heart tremble. He loosened his grip, and the perishing pot floated in the air. He took a deep breath and used his last wisp of divine perception to lock onto the giant devil's figure. Then, he flicked his finger. Buzz! Buzz! A muffled sound rang out as his finger touched the perishing pot. Under everyone's gaze, the perishing pot tore through the sky like the sun and shot toward the giant devil. In the sky, the giant devil's spear and the perishing pot approached at high speed. Finally, they collided. Chapter 1170. Few people had seen the horror of the perishing pot. When Bufang first made this thing, no one thought that it could have unparalleled destructive power. However, when the dried pot was thrown into the bronze door and caused a terrifying explosion, the crowd was stunned. Only when the arm of the little saint from the giant devil clan was blown to the point that even the bones were exposed did the crowd realize the horror of the pot. Now Bufang had once again used the perishing pot, a dish that combined the gourmet array and the will of the great path. This time, Bufang had pushed it to the extreme, and the power it unleashed was enough to make people shudder. Sizzle, the perishing pot burst into a dazzling white light like a blazing sun. After being flicked out by Bufang, it shot out like a bolt of white lightning. Wherever it passed, space would constantly collapse, which was sufficient to show how terrifying it was. The giant demon threw out a spear. This black spear was covered with dense lines. This was the giant demon bloodline's most proficient attack method. It was able to ruthlessly nail an enemy to the ground and absorb all of their vitality. It was a great weapon. The giant devil's eyes were bloodshot. He wouldn't fall into the same pit twice. Last time, the perishing pot had blasted him into a bloody mess. This time, he was determined to crush the person who used the perishing pot. He was just that irascible and violent. In the distance, many people's faces turned pale. Realm Lord Dit was even more shocked. He was amazed that Bufang could use such a powerful attack. No ordinary little saint expert could resist the power of the perishing pot. Zolords pinched his thumb and middle finger. All that was left in his eyes was the bright perishing pot. This was the first time he had seen it. Inwardly, he was unexpectedly excited. Bufang boy, kill this green-skinned monster. City Lord Zhou waved his thumb and middle finger and shouted. The surrounding nether prison experts also stopped what they were doing, looking at the location of the explosion. The next moment, everyone's eyes narrowed. The spear covered in black smoke collided with Bufang's perishing pot. Rumble! A deafening explosion resounded through the air. Then, under the horrified gazes of the crowd, the spear was actually blocked. Unable to move forward, the rapidly spinning spear gave off a tearing power, and a large hole appeared in space as cracks spread out. The perishing pot collided with the black spear, but its momentum didn't slow down at all. The incandescent brilliance continued to expand. In the next moment, a huge white lotus spread out, growing bigger and bigger, almost covering the entire horizon. A loud explosion erupted. Devoured by the terrible energy of the perishing pot, the stones on the ground turned into debris and scattered away. After resisting for a long while, the pitch-black spear finally crumbled. It was covered in cracks, which then spread out. With a cracking sound, it completely shattered. The troll's pupils constricted. His hair stood on end, and the hair on his body stood on end. He smashed his fists on the ground and let out a hissing roar. However, that huge destructive lotus was still expanding. Rumble! The whole fifth layer of the immortal cooking realm was shaking violently. The ground was shaking, and cracks could be seen all over it. Bufang's face was extremely weak, but he calmly looked into the distance. Sitting cross-legged on Xiaopi's back, he looked at the exploding destructive lotus and exhaled softly. Then, he asked Shrimpy to bring him away into the distance. Little Huli, lying on Bufang's shoulder, stared dumbfoundedly at the exploding lotus in the distance. She actually wanted to eat this thing. This kind of explosive power was much stronger than the explosive meatball. If Little Huli ate it, she might explode. Scared, Little Huli shyly raised her tail and wrapped it around her head. She buried her head on Bufang's shoulder and curled up into a ball. She wanted to be alone now. A ripping sound rang out. In a flash, Xiaopi flew away with Bufang, looking into the distance. The destructive lotus kept getting bigger and bigger. It swallowed everything around it and kept rolling around Shrimpy's back. The other experts in the surroundings also recovered from their shock as they looked at the destructive lotus that seemed to want to devour them. Without saying a word, they turned around and left. They fled in panic, but soon found that they couldn't escape at all. The destructive energy of the lotus was expanding too fast. In just a flash, many nether prison experts were devoured by the terrible power of the perishing pot and turned into ashes. The perishing pot was really a great killing tool. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed. With an explosive sound, her body shot into the distance like a cannonball. Her speed was extremely fast. Realm Lord Dit's figure flashed and appeared in front of the Zou Lords. He grabbed the latter's shoulder and soared into the sky. The giant devil also wanted to avoid the fluctuation of the destructive lotus. However, Bufang's target was the giant devil. Moreover, his body was so huge that it wasn't easy to dodge. Soon, he found that the destructive lotus was coming at him. The destructive lotus seemed to have turned into a small mountain, blotting out the sky. It was a shocking scene. The giant devil stomped his foot and found that there was no way to avoid it. Roaring, he turned around, swung his fists, and smashed them into the lotus. "Get out of here!" His fists were filled with dense nether energy, and a vague transparent will seemed to descend above his head. It was the will of the great path that belonged to the nether prison. The nether energy spread and seemed to turn into a huge wall, which tried to stop the perishing pot. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, the perishing pot hit the wall of nether energy. However, the wall of nether energy, which contained the will of the great path, was easily torn apart by the perishing pot. It was torn into pieces. The giant devil's pupils shrank. He watched helplessly as his hands were devoured by the perishing pot. Damn it! The giant devil was shocked and angry. His cultivation base burst out to the fullest, trying to stop the perishing pot. However, crack, crack, as the perishing pot continued to devour his arms, they began to break one after another. Even his bones were broken. This time, it wasn't just his flesh that was destroyed. The perishing pot expanded, and in the end, it completely swallowed the giant devil. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. From a distance, they could see a vague figure inside the perishing pot. The figure was struggling, but he couldn't break free. Stepping on Xiaopi's back, Bufang hovered in the distant sky with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the huge perishing pot. His vermilion robe flapped noisily in the wind. Explode. Bufang's eyes were indifferent as he opened his mouth and uttered softly. The next moment, everyone's pupils shrank. Then, they watched helplessly as the perishing pot exploded. Rumble! The whole world seemed to fall silent at this moment. All sounds were devoured. The huge lotus in the distance turned into a towering flame and exploded in an instant. Blasts of air blasted everywhere, lifting up a layer of the ground. A beam of light shot up into the sky from the lotus, twisting and distorting. The arc-shaped energy exploded, sending sand and pebbles flying. After the silence came the clamor. Finally, a terrible explosion rang out, deafening everyone. Everyone stared blankly at the huge mushroom cloud rising into the sky in the distance. This mushroom cloud was much bigger than the one Bufang created when he threw out a dozen bursting meatballs. City Lord Zou was completely dumbfounded, and his fingers were trembling. This thing was created by that little chef Bufang? This kind of attack almost destroyed the entire 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm. Had this little chef really become the real great demon? It's too terrible. It's a real weapon of destruction. Realm Lord Dit exclaimed in admiration. Blasts of air blasted out, sending countless experts flying away. Many of them fell in the distance, feeling lucky. Some people crawled up from the ground, looking at the scene in horror. Their bodies couldn't help but tremble. The giant devil's struggling figure had already lost its breath, and it didn't dare to move. Even the heaven nether bridge above the bronze gate fell silent at this moment. Behind the bronze gate, many experts who were watching were terrified, sucking in cold breaths. With this kind of destructive power, it was not hard to imagine that the giant devil was dead. Xiaopi put Bufang on the ground. A hot wind blew over, which seemed to contain the terrible power of the perishing pot. It lasted for about half a day. Only then did the terrifying explosions and rumbles slowly dissipate. Bufang held Little Hu in his arms, slowly walking toward the center of the explosion in the distance. After a while, the explosion dissipated, leaving only billowing smoke and dust. Swoosh! Bufang stopped walking. He had come to the center of the perishing pot, and his eyes widened. A huge, bottomless pit emerged, with gray smoke swirling in it. Even though he was standing at the edge of the deep pit, Bufang could still feel the terrifying shockwave of energy sweeping across his face. This kind of power could directly injure an expert who had just entered the true immortal realm. It was indeed worthy of being the perishing pot that had sucked up all of Bufang's divine perception. Its power was comparable to a full blow from the little saint. Even the sword demon, who was at the peak of the little saint, couldn't do more than this. The pit was so huge that it almost covered half of the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm. Moreover, it was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. It seemed that even the sky of the 4th floor of the Heaven Chief Realm had been blown through. Roar! Suddenly, a shrill and furious roar resounded from the deep pit. The sound of bones colliding rang out. Bufang stood by the pit with his hands clasped behind his back. He furrowed his brows. Suddenly, a huge black shadow rushed out of the deep pit filled with gray smoke. There was a loud bang. It leaped toward Bufang. It was a huge skeleton. Without a doubt, this was the skeleton of the little saint giant devil. The little saint's vitality was really tenacious. After suffering such an attack, he didn't die. However, the giant devil, who had turned into a skeleton, was almost burned to ashes. Only his heart was still beating, spurting vitality to maintain the skeleton. Looking at the giant devil's skeleton dashing toward him, Bufang's face didn't change. All of a sudden, a clanging sound of metal rang out. Xiao Bai's figure suddenly appeared in front of Bufang. He swung the war god stick. While swinging, the war god stick suddenly enlarged. Finally, with a boom, it hit the skeleton, smashing it into pieces. The giant devil's heart beat vigorously for a while. Then, it was smashed by Xiao Bai's stick. Blood filled the sky, falling like a rain of blood. As the blood rained down, the gray smoke also slowly dispersed. Xiao Bai landed, his mechanical eyes twinkling. Holding the war god stick, he stood by Bufang. The huge pit was shocking to the eye. Scattered around the deep pit were nether prison experts. Looking at the giant devil that had been killed, their bodies trembled. A little saint's existence, he had fallen. Rumble! In the gray sky, an invisible will of the great path seemed to roll. It seemed to be lamenting the fall of a little saint. Realm Lord Dit deeply exhaled, his tense body suddenly relaxing. A moment later, the golden light shrouding his body vanished. His entire body turned soft as he knelt on the ground on one knee. The side effect of forcibly breaking through to the little saint realm was too big. He was afraid that he would be weak for a long time. Lords hurried to support Realm Lord Dit, their eyes worried. Help me see Bufang. He has returned. He must have brought the spring of life. Our Heaven Chief Realm is saved. Although Realm Lord Dit was much calmer, his voice couldn't hide the excitement in it. Lords nodded, hurrying to pull Realm Lord Dit toward Bufang. However, they had just taken a few steps. Realm Lord Dit and Lords felt a terrifying aura under their feet, chilling their bodies and hearts. In the distance, the bronze gate creaking sounds rang out again. The bronze gate opened and nether energy spread. Clear footsteps rang out from the gate. The sound resounded through the sky, lingering between heaven and earth. Bufang's pupils constricted, and he jerked his head to look at the bronze gate. There, a figure wrapped in a black robe slowly emerged. He was clad in a black chef robe, and a bright star was embroidered on the sleeve of his robe. A terrifying aura filled the sky, making everyone feel a great pressure. "Well, I can't believe you killed a little saint of the giant devil clan. You're really capable. However, without the terrible destructive means just now, what else do you have to resist the invasion of the 9 Revolution Nether Chef's clan?" His voice grew cold, filled with a murderous aura, echoing through the whole place. Chapter 1171. A cold voice rang out, with a hint of mockery and ridicule. The aura of the figure at the bronze gate was very strong, even stronger than that giant devil. There was no doubt that this guy was also a little saint. He was even stronger than the giant devil, who was a First Revolution little saint. Tap, 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 another sound of footsteps rang out. At the side of the figure, another existence with a strong aura emerged. He was also wearing a chef robe, and his gray hair fluttered in the air. These 2 people had the faces of middle-aged men, but their auras were extremely strong. Realm Lord Dit's pupils constricted. A saint of the 9 Revolution Nether Chef's clan? They. Realm Lord Dit was dumbfounded. He never thought that the little saint of the 9 Revolution Nether Chef's clan would appear at this time. Was he here to reap the benefits? Previously, Realm Lord Dit had some doubts because it should be the 9 Revolution Nether Chef's clan who wanted to get the Heaven Tree seed of the Heaven Chief realm. However, when the bronze gate was opened, it was only the giant devil who attacked the Heaven Chief realm. "Are you surprised?" The Heaven Chief little saint smiled faintly. "After all, it's the Heaven Chief realm, a realm that used to be no weaker than the Nether prison. A dying camel is bigger than a horse, so I have to be careful. What if your Heaven Chief realm has a backup plan? It's not easy for me to cultivate to this level, and I don't want to die here without knowing why." The latter actually didn't show up because he was afraid of the Heaven Chief realm's backup plan. The little saint of the giant devil clan was just the vanguard. The giant demons are all idiot. They're easy to fool. After casually promising them some benefits, they'll rush forwards like idiots, but that's also good. I've forced out all of your cards. Now there shouldn't be anyone that can stop me. He took a step forward. The little saint's figure shot out in a flash, crossing the Heaven Nether Bridge. On the Heaven Nether Bridge, the densely packed Nether prison experts all raised their heads fervently. The low morale caused by the death of the giant demon erupted once again at this moment, becoming fiery. They waved their weapons and roared with excitement. Bufang stood at the edge of the deep pit, his vermilion robe fluttering in the wind. His face was slightly pale, which was the side effect of using the perishing pot. A great killing weapon like the perishing pot had to pay a certain price to be used. After all, this kind of weapon was not compatible with Bufang's cultivation. It never occurred to Bufang that the experts of the 9 Revolution Nether Chef's clan could be so insidious. With their hands behind their backs, the 2 little saint drifted over. In an instant, they crossed the Heaven Nether Bridge and stepped into the realm of the Heaven Chief realm. Tsk, 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 with his hands clasped behind his back, the Heaven Chief little saint sensed the chaotic spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the thin immortal energy in the 5th floor of Heaven Chief realm. He couldn't help but click his tongue, a hint of disdain in his eyes. The glorious Heaven Chief realm of the past has indeed completely fallen. The Heaven Chief little saint said faintly. At its peak, the Heaven Chief realm had a divine chef and dozens of Qilin chefs to suppress the heavens. Even when facing the Nether prison, it was not afraid at all. But now, the Heaven Chief realm was in ruins. There were no divine chefs, only one Qilin chef, and even the little saint had barely broken through. The declining Heaven Chief realm could no longer cultivate more experts. It was a pity but also a sadness. Despicable. The realm lord of the Dit realm came to his senses. He gritted his teeth in anger. With the help of the will of the Great Path, He had broken through to the little saint and could barely resist the little saint. With Bu Fang's perishing pot, he could even kill the little saint. However, the two little saints were still waiting to reap the benefit. This made the realm lord of the Dit realm feel powerless. Powerless and angry. The Zo lords trembled with anger. Were all the people of the Nether prison so despicable? They clearly had great strength, but they still used these despicable means. It was infuriating. The Heaven Chief Little Saint looked at the realm lord of the Dit realm and the Zo lords with a faint smile. Then, his eyes turned and fell on Bufang. The Nether Chef Little Saint's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Bufang, who had unleashed his ultimate weapon. This guy was really a variable. The perishing pot was such a great weapon that even the giant devil, who was thick-skinned, couldn't resist it. If Bufang could still use it, they might really have to flee. In their opinion, perhaps only a 3-revolution little saint could resist the perishing pot. However, looking at Bufang's pale face, the Heaven Chief Little Saint smiled. How could there be no side effects when using such a great weapon with the strength of a 9-star true immortal? He must not even have the strength to lift a finger now. There was nothing to worry about. Hand over the seed of the Heaven Tree, and I can let the Heaven Chief realm live. If you don't cooperate, don't blame me for killing you. Crossing the Heaven Nether Bridge, the two Heaven Chief Little Saints landed on the shore. Their eyes swept around and fell on the body of the realm lord of the Dit realm. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. The little saint appeared in front of the realm lord of the Dit realm. You want the seed of the Heaven Tree? Dream on. The realm lord of the Dit realm's face turned red as he growled unwillingly. The seed of the Heaven Tree was the hope of the Heaven Chief realm. How could he give it to a Nether Chef clan plunderer? You're courting death. The Heaven Chief Little Saint focused his eyes. He raised a hand. Then, he grabbed the realm lord of the Dit realm by the neck. With a rumble, he pressed the latter to the ground. The Zo lords looked angry and pinched his fingers together. However, the Heaven Chief Little Saint waved his hand and sent him flying away in an instant. He coughed up blood and fell to the ground in the distance. The other Heaven Chief Little Saint flashed and appeared in front of Bufang as if he had teleported. Can you still use that kind of killing weapon? The Heaven Chief Little Saint looked straight at Bufang with an expressionless face. Bufang furrowed his brows. If you can't, just stay here quietly. We're very interested in your secrets. The corners of the little saint's mouth curved upward into a faint smile. The perishing pot was a delicacy, but it could produce such terrible destructive fluctuations. This made the little saint, a Chilan chef of the Nether Chef clan, very curious. So, the little saint decided to capture the little chef and study him after he got the seed of the Heaven Tree. If he could figure out how to make the perishing pot and how to make it, then the 9-revolution Nether Chef clan's position among the 9 clans in Nether Prison would skyrocket. Boom! In the distance, the terrible golden light descended once again. The realm lord of the Dit realm lord coughed up blood and roared. His golden hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were filled with endless anger. As the lord of a realm, the realm lord of the Dit realm was furious to be suppressed and humiliated like this. Boom! In a flash, the little saint of the Nether Chef clan was knocked flying away. The realm lord of the Dit realm was covered in golden armor once more, although it was already quite tattered. Are you crazy? You're burning your blood essence to gain the fighting strength of the little saint for a short time? The Heaven Chief Little Saint, who was knocked flying away by the realm lord of the Dit realm, said in horror, his pupils constricting. The realm lord of the Dit realm lord's eyes changed, and his skin turned crimson in an instant. Burning one's blood essence was a very extreme method, and it damaged one's origin. Boom! The realm lord of the Dit realm lord leaped up. The ground exploded as he charged toward the little saint. In just a flash, a fierce battle broke out between them. The battle between them was very fierce. They seemed to have turned into 2 black lines in midair, constantly colliding with each other. Every time they collided, they would cause a rumble and a clamor, while terrible blasts of air flew in all directions. Nether energy and immortal energy collided and corroded each other, producing sizzling sounds. Suddenly, a knife light that blotted out the sky emerged. The black knife light contained the vague will of the great path. It slashed down. A golden wok emerged in the Realm Lord of the Dit Realm Lord's hand. The wok hovered over his head and blocked the knife energy. In the distance, the little saint of the Nether Chef clan held a black kitchen knife in his hand, his face solemn. A deafening rumble rang out. The kitchen knife hovering over the Realm Lord of the Dit Realm Lord's head shattered in an instant. The Realm Lord of the Dit Realm Lord was smashed hard into the ground, as if all his bones were broken. "What are you going to use to fight me? You've just become a little saint, and you can't even control the will of the great path." The Heaven Chief Little Saint sneered. The next moment, his body floated in midair. The sound of his heartbeat rang out. 1, 2, 3, 9 vague hearts emerged behind the little saint. A terrible aura kept spreading. Covered in blood, the Realm Lord of the Dit Realm Lord crawled out of the ruins, his eyes fixed on the little saint in midair. In the distance, the little saint standing at Bufong's side smiled faintly and said, "It's over." Bufong gave him a look. "No, not yet." Bufong answered expressionlessly. However, when the Realm Lord of the Dit Realm Lord saw that the little saint wanted to fight even though he was covered in blood, he could not help but feel a little emotional. Perhaps this was the persistence of being the lord of a realm. "Oh, do you still have some trump cards?" the little saint asked, looking at Bufong in confusion. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. "Trump cards? Of course I do. There's still a dog who hasn't shown up yet." "A dog?" The Heaven Chief Little Saint was bewildered. A moment later, his eyes shrank. In the distance, when the little saint gathered the power of the 9 hearts of cooking path, he slashed with his knife. That sky-covering knife light seemed to want to cut the entire 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm in half. The Realm Lord of the Dit Realm stumbled, kneeling on the ground. He was powerless to resist. Despair seemed to be spreading. However, just as that knife was about to slash down, the void in front of the Realm Lord of the Dit Realm suddenly twisted. It turned into a circular portal. Wind and snow blew out of the portal. A black, fat dog slowly walked out of the portal. Elegant cat-like steps, its fat jiggling. As soon as the dog appeared, it seemed to become the focus of the entire place, attracting everyone's eyes. "There's really a dog?" The Heaven Chief Little Saint, who was standing not far from Bufong, was bewildered. A moment later, he seemed to think of something. He sucked in a breath of cold air. "This dog, even a dog wants to court death?" The Heaven Chief Little Saint said coldly. Facing a black dog that just walked out of the portal, he was naturally not afraid. The knife light slashed down, wanting to cut the black dog in half. The Lord Ghost stepped out of the void, glancing at the flustered Realm Lord of the Dit Realm, twitching his doggy mouth. "You're really miserable," the Lord Ghost's magnetic voice resounded in the void. The Realm Lord of the Dit Realm looked at the Lord Go, suddenly grinning. "Mangy dog. Kill this thing for me." The Realm Lord of the Dit Realm looked a little cold. In the void, the little saint's eyes focused, and the knife light slashed down. With a ripping sound, the void continued to collapse. The Lord Go turned his head, feeling the howling wind. The strong wind blew, causing the fur on the Lord Go's body to shiver. A moment later, the Lord Go's mouth twitched, reaching out a small, exquisite dog paw. Buzz, the nether energy in the sky gathered, turning into a dog paw that covered the sky. The dog's paw struck out and smashed onto the saber chi, shattering it completely. In the void, the little saint's eyes shrank, sucking in a breath of cold air. "Xiaopi, let's go," Bufong said softly. Xiaopi, who was lying on Bufong's shoulder, squeaked. Instantly, it turned into a jet of gold light, bringing Bufong to the Realm Lord of the Dit Realm. The little saint was still in shock from the appearance of the Lord Go, so he did not stop Bufong. When he came back to his senses, Bufang had already reached the side of the realm lord of the Dit realm. The realm lord of the Dit realm looked at Bufang, panting heavily. The gold light on his body dispersed, and his aura became even weaker. He flipped his hand, taking out 2 dim heaven tree seeds, handing them to Bufang. His eyes were filled with hope. Bufang did not say anything, taking the seeds. With a thought, he took out a crystal fruit of life, letting the realm lord of the Dit realm eat it. As the crystal fruit of life entered his stomach, the body of the realm lord of the Dit realm, which felt empty, instantly became full. Life energy circulated, nourishing his body. Holding the 2 heaven tree seeds, Bufang glanced at the Lord Go. "You fat dog! Why did you stay in the God-vanishing mountain for so long? The Lord Go has something to discuss with that crazy woman. What's the hurry? Aren't we already here?" The Lord Go grinned. In the next instant, he raised his exquisite dog paw, sending another paw at the heaven chief little saint in the air. "Then I'll leave this place to you. I'll be back soon," said Bufang. Then, with a thought, his entire being entered the heaven and earth farmland. Boom! Boom! As the Lord Go's paw came out in the direction of the bronze gate, the majestic city wall of the nether prison suddenly shook. The Lord Go's paw seemed to have angered the supreme existence of the thick city wall. Chapter 1172. Heaven and Earth Farmland. Bufang's mind flickered, and he entered it. Today, the farmland had almost become Bufang's little world. Bufang could enter it at any time. Of course, wherever he entered, he would come out from. This was the law of the plain. The Heaven and Earth farmland was very peaceful. A leisurely breeze was blowing. Bufang landed on the ground and soon landed in the bushes. The air was filled with a tranquil fragrance, like the fragrance of immortal ingredients and immortal herbs. Bufang looked up. In front of the wooden house in the distance, a big tree grew. It was the Heaven Tree, which was bred from the seed of the Heaven Tree. It was somewhat similar to the Heaven Chief of the Heaven Chief realm. However, compared to the majestic Heaven Tree of the Heaven Chief realm, this Heaven Tree looked much smaller. Of course, it didn't have the immortal energy of the Heaven Tree of the Heaven Chief realm. However, Bufang could feel it. Since the birth of the Heaven Tree, the atmosphere of the entire farmland had changed. It was as if it had a backbone. This feeling was especially strong. Although the previous farmland wasn't bad, it was scattered and disorderly. Although Bufang and Nyo Han-san had tried their best to arrange the farmland, each position was planned to plant the immortal ingredients and spirit herbs. However, it was still lacking something, and the birth of the Heaven Tree was like the finishing touch. Of course, there was also the change of the river. The source of the spring of life was placed in the river, so the water flowing out of the river was full of vitality. The creatures in the farmland had become much stronger. Bufang was very satisfied. With his hands clasped, he walked forward. Not long after, he arrived in front of the wooden house. In front of the wooden hut, Nyo Han-san was lazily lying on a chair. The Heaven Tree blocked the sunlight, but it still gave off a relaxing and comfortable atmosphere. Bufang glanced at Nyo Han-san, who was snoring like thunder. Instead of waking him up, he walked into the river. He snapped his fingers. Boom! There was an explosion in the river. Suddenly, the little silver dragon came out and quickly circled in front of Bufang, swinging its tail. The little silver dragon seemed to be very happy with Bufang's appearance and kept rolling around. Bufang stretched out his finger and stroked the little silver dragon. He opened his palm, and on his palm were 2 dim seeds of the immortal tree. "I'll have to trouble you again." Bufang poked the little silver dragon and said. The little silver dragon landed on Bufang's palm, looking confused. Seeing the Heaven Tree seeds, the little silver dragon cupped the seeds and swallowed them. With a gulp, a seed entered its stomach, causing Little Silver's body to swell up. However, the little silver dragon didn't seem to give up. He grabbed the other seed and swallowed it. His whole body seemed to be about to explode. The corners of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. Looking at the charmingly naive little silver dragon, he found it quite interesting. The little silver dragon was the source of the spring of life, and the life force it contained was incomparably thick. Soon, the 2 heaven tree seeds were spat out by the little silver dragon, which had a layer of silver substance moving over them. That silver substance was overflowing with light, and bits of vitality seeped into the seeds. The seeds immediately shone brightly. "Oh, Owner Bu, where did you get these 2 seeds?" No one knew when Niu Hansan had appeared behind Bu Fang. His sudden voice startled Bu Fang. Bu Fang turned his head, looking at Niu Hansan with an expressionless face, which made the latter dumbfounded. "These seeds are a set. However, these 2 seeds can't be planted in the heaven and earth farmland. It's also not suitable to plant 3 heaven tree seeds," Bu Fang said. Niu Hansan nodded. After staying in the heaven and earth farmland for so long, he naturally knew how tolerant the farmland was. The heaven tree seeds were too extraordinary. If 3 were planted, they could usurp the host and invade the farmland's will of the great path. If that happened, it would not be a good thing for the farmland. It would become a bad thing. The 2 seeds regained their vitality. Bu Fang grasped them in his hand. Using his finger to rub the little silver dragon's head, the latter happily jumped in Bu Fang's palm. Then, it suddenly jumped into the river. As soon as it entered the river, it turned into a giant dragon. With a swing of its tail, it dove into the depths of the river. It set off ripples. Bu Fang grabbed the seeds, gently exhaling. Niu Hansan, study the death food tools. After a period of time, I will draw many gourmet arrays. Now, you need to help me find suitable ingredient, Bu Fang said. Niu Hansan was bewildered. He seemed to be a little puzzled by the urgency in Bu Fang's voice. Nodding, Niu Hansan didn't dare to be negligent. It just so happened that he had nothing to do during this period of time. Then, Bu Fang said something to Niu Hansan, then turned around and left the farmland. Rumble! The Lord Go narrowed his dog eyes and looked outside the nether prison city wall. Over there seemed to be a supreme aura bursting out. Ah, mangy dog! You don't dare to make a move, do you? In the sky, the heaven chief little saint also understood the Lord Go's strength, and it could even be said that he recognized this dog. This was the dog that had turned the nether prison upside down. This dog was very terrifying. Even among the great sage, it was very strong. However, now that he was leading the army to attack the Heaven Chief realm, this dog wouldn't dare to make a move. After all, the Heaven Chief realm was not Earth prison. If this dog made a move, it would certainly force the supreme existence of the 9 Revolution Nether Chef clan to make a move. If the Heaven Chief realm turned into a battlefield with the strength of the 2 great sage, the entire Heaven Chief realm might be destroyed. It should be noted that the great sage was many times stronger than the little saint. After becoming a great sage, he could step out of the realm and walk in the starry sky. He was a real supreme existence. At most, the little saint could only borrow the will of the great path to stay in the starry sky for a short time. Obviously, the Lord Go understood that. If the great sage behind him made a move, the whole Heaven Chief realm might be destroyed. However, the Lord Go doesn't like the look of you. Lord Dog's magnetic voice reverberated in the void, exploding all of a sudden. The next moment, the dog paw slapped out again. Buzz, this time, the exquisite dog paw had changed. It was filled with terrifying heavenly will, the heavenly will that belonged to hell. The will of the great path swirled in the paw, making it stronger and stronger. The nether chef little saint in midair froze. Before he could react, he was hit by the paw of the Lord Go. He was knocked down from the sky and smashed to the ground with a loud boom. This paw didn't kill the little saint. However, the little saint's face was covered in dirt from the bombardment. The little saint was so aggrieved. He pointed at the Lord Go, glaring at him. He had the support of the great sage, a 9 Revolution nether chef, so he wasn't afraid of the Lord Go. What about you? The Lord Go doesn't like you, so he can't beat you? Tell the guy behind you to come out and fight with the Lord Go. The Lord Go twitched his mouth. The Heaven Chief Little Saint was so angry and aggrieved. Behind the Lord Go, Realm Lord D. Tai guffawed, flipping his blonde hair. What are you laughing at? He's just a loser. What right does he have to laugh? The Heaven Chief Little Saint looked at the Realm Lord Dit coldly. The Realm Lord Dit was unhappy. If you have the ability to fight one-on-one, I won't even recognize your father. You're just a despicable man who wants to take advantage of others. How dare you laugh at me? The Realm Lord Dit looked at the little saint. Swoosh. The other little saint also flew into the sky. Then, he met up with the little saint. Where's the little chef? You didn't catch him? The little saint looked at the other little saint, widening his eyes. The Realm Lord Little Saint had caught a 9-star true immortal realm expert, but the other had escaped. The Realm Lord Little Saint didn't explain anything. Was he going to say that he saw the little chef being slapped away by a dog? As a companion, he was so shocked that he let the little chef escape? If he said that, their friendship would capsize at any moment. Buzz, all of a sudden, a wave of mysterious energy rippled out. The two little saints narrowed their eyes and looked down at the ground. There, Bufong appeared out of nowhere. Bufong was holding 2 seeds in his hands, which emitted immense vitality and thick immortal energy. It's a sacred-grade immortal ingredient, the seeds of the Heaven Tree. The two little saints' eyes shrank, taking in cold breath. The Realm Lord Dit's eyes were also attracted. Looking at the 2 seeds of the Heaven Tree in Bufong's hands, he couldn't help but shiver. The seeds of the Heaven Tree were full of vitality. They were the hope of the Heaven Chief Realm. Are the seeds of the Heaven Tree alive? The Realm Lord Dit asked, his voice trembling. They're alive. Bufong nodded. A moment later, he flicked his fingers and the 2 seeds flew out, falling into the Realm Lord Dit's hands. Boom! In the void, the 2 little saints moved. In a flash, they shot out and the void was crushed by their feet. You dare to come again? The Lord Go glared, raising his exquisite dog paw, about to wave at the 2 little saints. However, as soon as he raised his paw, a terrifying aura shot out from the Nether Prison's city wall. The Lord Go's paw paused. A moment later, you still want to take advantage of me? Do you really think that you, the Lord Go, are easy to bully? The Lord Go roared. Thick nether energy quickly gathered. A moment later, it turned into a huge earth prison dog. Its body was surrounded by the burning pitch-black earth prison flame. Its body shot out as if it had teleported. With 3 teleportations, it crossed the Heaven Nether Bridge, entering the Bronze Gate. Then, behind the Bronze Gate, earth-shaking battle cries rang out. The 2 little saints didn't think that the black dog would directly pass them. It didn't put them in its eyes. However, they didn't care. Instead, they were wild with joy. Go. Take the seeds of the Heaven Tree, and the mission is completed. The 2 little saints roared at the same time. Their figures burst out with extreme speed, charging toward the Realm Lord Dit. Bufong looked at the little saint, then at the Realm Lord Dit, gently exhaling. The seeds have been revived. The hope you mentioned, does it have a chance to sprout? Bufong asked. The Realm Lord Dit's mouth rose, his face full of excitement. Give me the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. The Realm Lord Dit said. Bufong nodded, then turned his head, clasped his hands behind his back, and stepped in front of the Realm Lord Dit. In the distance, the 2 little saints sped over. You want to stop us? Without that great weapon, how can you stop us? The 2 little saints roared. They didn't put Bufong, who couldn't use the perishing pot, in their eyes at all. Bufong twitched his mouth. How do you know that I can't use the perishing pot? Bufong said lightly. His voice wasn't loud, but it was heard by the 2 little saints. The 2 froze, then their eyes shrank. Because of Bufong, with a shake of his hand, a silver perishing pot appeared in his hand. The silver pot spun, steam rising from it. At the bottom of the pot, a white flame was burning. It was indeed a perishing pot. This little chef can use the perishing pot? The two little saints were taken aback. They gasped and shuddered as they recalled the scene where the giant devil was blown to bits by the perishing pot, leaving only bones behind. Without hesitation, they stopped moving. Fiddling with the perishing pot in his hand, Bufang paced back and forth with his hands clasped behind his back. The atmosphere suddenly became stagnant. As soon as the perishing pot appeared, everyone was frightened, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. After pacing for a while, he put away the perishing pot with a flip of his hand. Oh! The two little saints looked at each other and instantly understood that the boy couldn't use the perishing pot. He must have been bluffing just now. Damn it! Go! The two little saints looked at each other and roared. Then, they sped toward Bufang. However, as soon as they moved, their pupils constricted again. Because they saw Bufang take out the F*King perishing pot again. At this moment, the two little saints only had one word left in their minds. What's the point of being so naughty? Not only did Bufang take out the perishing pot, but he also took out a fruit filled with life energy and stuffed it into his mouth. Now, they didn't dare to attack again. The two little saints were so depressed that they almost vomited blood. Bufang glanced at the two little saints and twitched the corner of his mouth. His mind flickered. Another perishing pot appeared. Two perishing pots hovered in Bufang's hands, glowing with a silver light, steaming hot air, and a rich aroma. Guess if I can make the perishing pot explode. With one pot in each hand, Bufang raised his head and looked at the two little saints in midair. The two little saints were speechless, and for a moment, they didn't dare to bet. Who knew if Bufang, who had eaten the fruit filled with life energy, could make the perishing pot work? Behind Bufang, Realm Lord Dit dug a deep pit in the ground and carefully planted the two golden heaven tree seed. After covering them with soil, Realm Lord Dit punched himself in the chest. His face turned pale in an instant. Blood sprayed out of his mouth and sprinkled on the place where the seeds were buried. Immediately, a terrible life energy surged like a dragon. A touch of green broke through the soil. The moment this green appeared, the whole Heaven Chief realm suddenly changed dramatically. The moment Bufang sensed the green, the corner of his mouth twitched. With a flip of his hand, he put away the two perishing pots. Using the perishing pots to show off had put a lot of pressure on him. After putting away the pots, Bufang looked at the two little saints and grinned. I really can't make the perishing pots explode. You guessed it right. Congratulations, Bufang said seriously. The two little saints looked at each other. In the end, they were so angry that they coughed up blood. Were they F*King tricked? Chapter 1173. If Bufang asked them if they were angry, even if the two little saints had to die, they would beat Bufang up. It was so annoying. How could they scare people like that? Playing with two perishing pots in his hands. That kind of thing is very scary, okay? If it accidentally exploded, then it would be the end of their lives. Of course, Bufang didn't care about the emotions of the two little saints. What he needed to do was to buy time, so that Realm Lord Dit could plant the seed of the Heaven Tree and let the Heaven Tree sprout. Of course, he didn't think about what would happen next. Realm Lord Ditai's face was filled with excitement as he looked at the green sprouts bursting out of the ground. He couldn't help but look excited. He reached out his hand, hovering above the tender green sprout. A big hole appeared in his palm, from which thick blood kept flowing, dripping into the tender sprout on the ground. That tender sprout crazily absorbed Realm Lord Dit's blood. This scene made people's hair stand on end. However, at this moment, the aura of the entire Heaven Chief realm changed dramatically. The originally declining Heaven Chief realm seemed to be revived at this moment. Dense heaven and earth spirit energy was produced at this moment. Rumble! A violent tremor broke out. The entire Heaven Chief realm shook. In the fifth layer of the immortal cooking realm, The wreckage of the immortal tree vanished in an instant, turning into tiny particles that kept drifting away. Not only the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm, but also the 4th floor, the 3rd floor, the 2nd floor, the 1st floor, they were all like this. At this moment, the withered remains of the heaven tree suddenly cracked, turning into tiny particles that were blown away by the wind. Only a huge, deep hole was left in the ground. At this moment, the entire Heaven Chief Realm fell into a complete silence. Everyone stared blankly at the disappearing immortal tree. They were dumbfounded, and their hearts trembled. The Heaven Tree was the hope of every expert in the Heaven Chief Realm. But now, this hope had actually disappeared? Dressed in a long robe, Mengqi stood on the city wall, looking at the disappearing Heaven Tree with a sense of loss. Did he fail? The Heaven Chief Realm was still heading towards destruction and death? Suddenly, Mengqi was slightly taken aback. She stretched out her hand, and her spiritual energy surged out as she began to sense the changes in the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. Unlike before, the destruction of the Heaven Tree didn't cause the entire Heaven Chief Realm to collapse. Instead, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth seemed to be recovering. Mengqi's eyes flashed as she raised her fair palm. In his palm, energy continued to gather, turning into an energy ball. The energy ball had immortal qi swirling around it. The immortal qi was so familiar that it made Mengqi a bit sluggish. Then, Mengqi's red lips curved into a happy smile. Rumble! At the spot where the heaven tree had collapsed, a new seedling began to grow. A rumbling sound rang out. The next moment, the seedling began to grow rapidly, and in just a flash, it had pierced through heaven and earth. Although it was not as magnificent as the previous heaven tree, it still had a touch of mysterious beauty. The reborn heaven tree contained a tremendous life force that was not there before. It's the heaven tree. The heaven tree has come back to life. I can feel a strong life force. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth has recovered. The immortal chefs in the 3rd layer of the immortal city were so excited that they danced with joy. Everyone revealed a look of surprise and excitement. They were so happy that they didn't know what to say to express their emotions at this moment. Some even cried tears of joy. They didn't know what losing the heaven tree meant to them. However, they knew that the days when the heaven tree was on the verge of death were the darkest days of the Heaven Chief Realm. The 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm, because of a great battle, the 4th and 5th layers had completely fused together. The heaven tree soared into the sky, directly piercing through the 2 layers. The ground of the 5th layer was in a mess, with rubble rolling everywhere. The ground had been overturned, which was enough to show how terrible the battle was. In front of Dit's realm lord, a touch of green suddenly grew. After sacrificing so much blood, the heaven tree suddenly turned into a giant creature, soaring into the sky. The lush, umbrella-like leaves spread, rustling and colliding with each other. The entire 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm seemed to be enveloped by the entire heaven tree. Suddenly, a strong life force spread out from it. The Heaven Chief Realm had come back to life. The heaven tree had come back to life. The heaven tree had come back to life. The 2 little saints of the 9 Revolution Netherchef's clan looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. The next moment, they sped away without hesitation, heading toward the place where the heaven tree was coming back to life. They had to cut down the heaven tree before the heaven tree fully came back to life. In this way, the foundation of the Heaven Chief Realm would be destroyed, and they would have a chance to obtain the seed of the heaven tree. This kind of sacred-grade, immortal ingredient should be planted in the garden of the 9 Revolution Netherchef's clan. Only then could it bring out its full effect. Bufang glanced at the 2 little saints, who were about to go berserk, then at the growing heaven tree. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. It seems you have to keep guessing whether I can blow up this dried pot or not. With the dried pot in his hand, Bufang stood in front of the 2 little saints and spoke again. The faces of the two little saints darkened instantly. "This guy is doing this on purpose. Get lost!" one of the little saints cursed. He roared at Bufang. However, the next moment, his pupils constricted. That was because Bufang had taken out another spirit fruit of life, filled with life force, and stuffed it into his mouth. The aura of life exploded. "Guess again," Bufang said. "Guess my ass. You're courting death." One of the little saints flew into a rage. With a stomp, his body turned into thousands of streams of light and appeared in front of Bufang in a flash. Terrible waves of air stirred up. The mighty pressure seemed to push Bufang to the ground. Bufang focused his eyes. Suddenly, behind him, the heaven tree swayed and seemed to emit thousands of rays of light. The rustling sound of the leaves rubbing against each other sounded like the whispers of a powerful existence. In front of Bufang, the little saint furiously pushed out his palm. This palm contained endless power. If it hit Bufang, without the invincibility of the vermilion robe, Bufang might really be seriously injured. However, this time, Bufang did not even need to use the invincibility of the vermilion robe. A branch suddenly broke out from the ground. Like a sharp spear, it instantly pierced through the air, piercing toward the little saint. The little saint's heart trembled. His pupils constricted. He stopped attacking Bufang, and his figure suddenly turned into countless illusions, disappearing from his spot. The branch that broke out of the ground was overflowing with colorful light, as if it was blooming with 7-colored light. The little saint sucked in a breath of cold air, his pupils constricting. Boom! An explosive sound rang out. The ground kept breaking. The minor saint was moving in the void. Branches that looked like spears were constantly shooting out, releasing whistling sounds and tearing the sky apart. The two little saints did not dare to stop. They quickly moved in the air to dodge. They tried their best to avoid these branches. Buzz, the heaven tree seemed to have a spirit. Branches shot out from the ground, and branches fell from the trees as well. The branches on the tree were even more powerful. They fiercely whipped out, causing the void to crack. Each whip was not weaker than the attack of a Saint Realm expert. The heaven tree was like a powerful, supreme existence. Realm Lord Dit looked at it and suddenly laughed. His laughter was full of joy. The grievances he had suffered for so many days were completely released at this moment. "You bullied my heaven chief Realm. You bullied my Realm Lord Dit. Come on." Realm Lord Dit's body was extremely weak. His face was pale. He had lost too much blood, and he was seriously injured. At this moment, he was very weak. However, he was extremely excited. The once invincible heaven tree had returned. As the ruler of the Heaven Chief Realm, Realm Lord Dit could clearly feel that the current heaven tree was nurturing an incomparably powerful force, which was even stronger than the previous heaven tree. The hope of the Heaven Chief Realm, it had finally returned. How dare a loser be so arrogant? If you come out, I will kill you. The Heaven Chief Little Saint's eyes were full of killing intent. However, his body was forced to move by the branches that had broken out of the ground. Moreover, as time passed, the power contained in the branches seemed to become more and more terrifying. Bufang looked at the two little saints who were moving, holding the perishing pot expressionlessly. "Here's the question. Can you guess if I can make the perishing pot explode?" Bufang said. The little saint's face darkened when he heard Bufang's words. This guy must be crazy. He kept asking questions. Did he really think that they, the little saint, were fools? It really made people want to slap him in the face. The little saint was so angry that his heart was in a mess. Then, puff! His body was instantly pierced. Because his mental force was not concentrated enough, the heaven tree's branches seized the opportunity and directly pierced his body. The gigantic branch of the immortal tree pierced through the little saint and swung it with a terrifying force, causing the little saint to be flung around in the void. He coughed up blood. The will of the great path emanating from the heaven tree's branches kept destroying the little saint's body. At the same time, the will of the great path of the Heaven Chief Realm was constantly recovering and perfecting itself. HHH. The little saint let out an unwilling roar. His clothes were stained with blood. Drops of the little saint's blood drifted down from the sky, but they were constantly absorbed by the heaven tree. It made the heaven tree stronger and stronger. The other little saint was scared out of his wits. He turned and was about to run away. However, how could the confused little saint stop the increasingly powerful heaven tree? Puff! The immortal tree's branches shot out once again, piercing through his body. Blood splattered across the sky. Down below, all the nether prison experts couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. It was too horrible. Those were the little saint's existences, but the little saint was pierced by a tree without being able to fight back. As time went by, what frightened them even more was, the two little saints' bodies kept drying up, and their essence was completely absorbed by the heaven tree's branches. In the end, it completely scattered like a speck of dust. The two little saints, they died at the same time. Bufang's eyes couldn't help but narrow. He could feel the terror of the heaven tree. If the heaven tree went on a killing spree, who could stop it? Fortunately, the heaven tree seemed to have a spirit. It didn't go on a killing spree. It only killed the two little saint before withdrawing all its branches. No, not all of them though. A dazzling golden branch swayed in the air, as if it was about to shatter the void. The next moment, the branch streaked across the sky, tearing through heaven and earth. With a swoosh, the branch crossed the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm. It crossed the Heaven Nether Bridge. Then, it swept out and hit the Nether Prison's city wall. With a loud bang, the city wall trembled continuously from the attack. A terrible battle was breaking out behind the city wall. The branch lashed out, passing through the bronze door and joining the battle. The next moment, a furious roar rang out from behind the city wall. The roar shook the sky. The whole 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm seemed to be shaking and collapsing. A dog. A tree. How dare you bully me like this? The Nether Chef clan expert roared furiously. It seemed that the Heaven Tree's branch had joined the battle, turning the tide of the battle around. Rumble! There seemed to be a thunderclap. Saint blood splattered. The next moment, accompanied by a heart-wrenching roar, the sound of limbs breaking shook the world. It was a long time before the sound faded away. I, the great sage, won't let you off like this. Next time, I'll cut down the tree and slaughter the dog. A slightly flustered and exasperated voice rang out in the distance, gradually fading away. A ripping sound rang out. The Heaven Tree's branch pulled back. Saint blood flashed on the Heaven Tree's branch, as if it had drunk a lot of it. Then, a black figure walked over from outside the city wall. With a white leg of lamb in his mouth, Lord Go happily walked back with graceful cat-like steps. The leg of lamb exuded surging energy, so bright that it seemed to blind people. Lord Go landed on the ground. Soon, he appeared in front of Bufang. The leg of lamb was thrown to the ground. Lord Go grinned at Bufang. Bufang boy, Lord Go has found you a good ingredient. The leg of the great sage goat. Lord Go said, smacking his lips. Bufang also froze for a moment, then his eyes lit up. This was the legendary great sage ingredient. The Heaven Tree's branch pulled back. The Nether Prison experts in the Heaven Chief Realm all felt their hair stand on end. In the next moment, as the Heaven Tree's branch swung again, those Nether Prison experts seemed to have lost their souls, frantically running in the direction of the Bronze Gate. The Heaven Nether Bridge was packed with people. Some people even fell under the bridge, swallowed by the boundless darkness. In just a moment, the Nether Prison experts in the Heaven Chief Realm all retreated. Behind the Bronze Gate, the powerful spies also hid themselves. With the recovery of the Heaven Tree, the plan to invade the Heaven Chief Realm and plunder the Heaven Tree's seed would be put on hold, but now that the Bronze Gate had lost its seal, the Nether Prison experts could cross over at any time. The crisis of the Heaven Chief Realm still hung over everyone's heads. Chapter 1174. The heaven tree was destroyed and then rebuilt. Its essence was contained in the seed of the heaven tree, looking forward to the day it broke through the soil. Originally, the immortal tree had been continuously decaying. However, after being destroyed and rebuilt, the immortal tree had obtained endless vitality. Bufang looked at the swaying seed of the heaven tree, which was emitting a mighty life force and immortal energy, and couldn't help but show a look of surprise. He didn't expect that the heaven tree could recover to this state in an instant and become the pillar that supported the heaven chief realm again. This was somewhat rare. Moreover, with the resurrection of the heaven tree, the immortal energy in the whole heaven chief realm had become much denser, and the will of the great path had become complete. The people in the heaven chief realm could feel the recovery of power. On the 5th floor of heaven chief realm, all the nether prison experts had left the 5th floor. The heaven tree dropped a branch and smashed it on the bronze gate. The branch was full of mysterious patterns, and there was even a strange sound of Sanskrit swirling around it, making the nether prison experts behind the gate afraid to take a step forward. The branch of the heaven tree was extremely terrifying. It could even pierce through a little saint expert and absorb his life essence. How could the others dare to offend the heaven tree? Therefore, the crisis of the heaven chief realm was over for the time being. Next, the whole heaven chief realm would enter a long period of recuperation. However, it was conceivable. After this crisis, Realm Lord Dit, who had grown a lot, would certainly not allow the heaven chief realm to grow freely like before. He had to let the many heaven chief realm go through real hardship. Only in this way, when the next crisis came, the experts of the whole heaven chief realm would not be as useless as this time. Chef's challenge must be carried out, and not only Chef's challenge, but also combat. Realm Lord Dit was lost in thought. The ingredient of the great sage. Pleasantly surprised, Bufang grabbed the leg of the goat from the ground. As soon as he touched the leg, Bufang sensed an incomparably terrifying aura. The leg seemed to contain an incomparably powerful aura and will. It was the will of the great sage. Even though his leg had been chopped off, the will within the leg had yet to dissipate. Its flesh was sparkling and translucent, and it was brimming with essence energy. It was definitely not an ordinary ingredient. Bufang grabbed the leg of the goat, feeling very excited. Bufang, kid, this leg of goat is the ingredient of the great sage. What are you going to do with it? Lord Goat turned back into a fat dog. He stuck out his tongue and looked at Bufang warmly. The gazes of the surrounding people also involuntarily shifted over. Realm Master Dit and Zo Lords also approached. He was also quite curious about the ingredients of the great sage. The great sage was such an unreachable existence. The one who could become the great sage could be called a supreme existence. He could walk in the starry sky, and he was a true peerless expert. And now they saw the ingredient of a peerless expert with their own eyes. Let's go back to the restaurant first, Bufang said. Then, with a thought, he wrapped the leg of goat, bringing it into the heaven and earth farmland. After putting away the leg of goat, the gazes of the surrounding people stopped. Realm Lord Dit rubbed his hands, smiling at Bufang. Little friend Bufang, when you're done cooking the leg of goat, you must invite me. The great sage's leg of goat. Just thinking about it makes me drool. Bufang thought for a while, then nodded. As for this leg of goat, how to cook it, it was a problem worth thinking about. Bufang had already come up with many ways to cook the leg of lamb. However, Bufang knew very well that, after all, it was the ingredient of the great sage, and there must be something extraordinary about it. First of all, he had to remove the pressure from the ingredient. Otherwise, it would easily affect the taste of the ingredient. So, Bufang had to think about the specific cooking method. Buzz, suddenly, the system's serious voice rang in Bufang's head. Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary task. Obtain the source of the spring of life in God Vanishing Mountain and help the seed of the heaven tree recover. Task reward. one fragment of the god of cooking set and the seed of the 9-revolution Great Path Tea. Bufang froze. Then, it dawned on him that he had gone to God Vanishing Mountain to complete this temporary task. Now that the Heaven Tree had recovered and repelled the Nether Prison invaders, the task could be considered completed. The task reward was also given out. One fragment of the god of cooking set. Now Bufang had collected 2 fragments of the god of cooking set, and the other reward was the seed of the 9-revolution Great Path Tea. Just the name of this seed alone was enough to tell that it was extraordinary. Bufang was very curious about the next fragment of the god of cooking set. However, there was still some time before he collected all the fragments, so Bufang didn't think too much about it. As for the 9-revolution Great Path Tea, Bufang didn't pay much attention to it. He withdrew his consciousness. Bufang raised his eyes and glanced around. The whole 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm was in a mess. Only the Heaven Tree stood in the center, emitting thousands of rays of light. It might take a long time for the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm to return to its former glory. Perhaps in the coming days, the focus of Heaven Chief Realm would shift to the other layers of Heaven Chief Realm. Just when Bufang and the others were about to leave the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm, Bufang suddenly felt a strange fluctuation. It gave Bufang pause. Buzz waves surged in Bufang's spirit sea. His eyes seemed to become misty. He looked at the huge Heaven Tree in the distance. In the Heaven Tree, there seemed to be a light shadow watching Bufang from a distance. The light shadow nodded at Bufang. Then, it flew into the Heaven Tree and disappeared. That should be the spirit of the Heaven Tree. A rustling sound rang out incessantly. Suddenly Bufang froze. He didn't know when the branches of the Heaven Tree had spread to him. A 7-colored seed of the Heaven Tree was hanging on the branches. Take it. This is a gift from the Heaven Tree because you revived the Heaven Tree. Realm Lord Dit said in surprise. Bufang paused and didn't say anything. If he hadn't gone to God Vanishing Mountain to get the source of the spring of life, he might not have been able to save the Heaven Tree. Bufang accepted the gift without any burden. Click. He plucked the 7-colored fruit of the Heaven Tree from it. A fragrant smell spread out from it. Bufang took a deep breath and felt a strong essence. There was no doubt that the gift from the Heaven Tree was not an ordinary thing. And Bufang didn't plan to open the gift on the 5th floor. Instead, he planned to open it in the Heaven Chief restaurant. There was nothing else to do after that. Although Realm Lord Dit was weak, he was very excited. City Lord Zhou was also incomparably excited. At first, he thought that the Heaven Chief Realm would be completely destroyed. He didn't expect that in the end, it would be saved by the Great Demon. Now, the way Zhou Lords looked at Bufang was completely different. They passed through the entrance of the 5th floor. The group of people went straight to the 3rd floor. The 4th floor of the Heaven Chief Realm was suppressed by the 5th floor, completely merging with the 5th floor. From now on, the 5th floor of the Heaven Chief Realm could only be changed to the 4th floor. The 3rd floor of the Heaven Chief Realm. In the Immortal City. All the Heaven Chief were looking at the entrance with anticipation. On the city wall there were many Heaven Chief. Leading them was City Lord Mengqi. She was wearing a long robe, looking like a fairy. Her beautiful eyes looked straight at the entrance. Suddenly, at the entrance, several figures stepped out from within. Seeing those familiar figures, City Lord Mengqi's eyes instantly burst out with joy. Her tense heart also completely relaxed at this moment. She covered her mouth, feeling as though she was crying tears of joy. Bufang, Realm Lord Dit, Zhou Lords and Lord Go they had returned. This meant that the Heaven Chief Realm had passed the crisis. The Heaven Chief Realm was saved. For a moment, City Lord Mengqi had mixed feelings. In the Immortal City. After a long moment of silence, many Heaven Chief cheered excitedly. It was just a real cheer filled with happiness and excitement. The joy of victory made everyone's eyes fill with tears. The Heaven Chief Realm was their home. They had once thought that their home would be destroyed. However, after being saved, the happiness of surviving a disaster made them unconsciously cheer. Realm Lord Dit looked at the Heaven Chief Realm cheering, his eyes a little dazed. The corners of his mouth also curved into a smile. The sense of accomplishment of being the Realm Lord at this moment made him feel proud. The corners of Bufang's mouth also rose slightly. They didn't stay in the third layer for too long. In this battle, everyone had consumed a lot of energy, and they urgently needed to rest. Bufang's divine perception was completely used up when he used the perishing pot. Realm Lord Dit's will of the Great Path had damaged his body greatly. Moreover, in order to make the heaven tree sprout and grow, he had lost more than half of his blood essence. At this moment, he was in a state of deficit. He had forced his cultivation base to break through to the Little Saint realm, and he almost fell back to the half-step Saint realm. The Zo Lords had gone through a great battle and used up the last drop of immortal energy in his body. His body was already like an arrow at the end of its flight. If Bufang hadn't given him a crystal fruit of life, he would have died a long time ago. They all needed to rest. Of course, Lord Go was in the best state. Walking with elegant cat-like steps, he was thinking about how Bufang would deal with the great sage's goat leg. As he thought about it, he kept drooling. Mengqi didn't stay in the third layer of the Heaven Chief realm for too long. She also needed to rest now. She followed Bufang and the others back to the first layer of the Heaven Chief realm. Back in the Heaven Chief restaurant Creek, she pushed open the door of the restaurant. A strong aroma of food wafted out of the restaurant. The aroma made everyone feel as if they had been in another world. No matter if there was a war outside, the Heaven Chief restaurant was always so warm and tranquil. Ting-a-ling. The curtain of the restaurant was lifted. Cece walked out of the kitchen with a dish in her hands and placed it on the table. He happened to see Bufang and the others pushing the door open, and he grinned happily. "Teacher Boo, you're back!" Cece shouted happily. The Black Dragon King and the others also walked out of the restaurant. Yu's face was cold. Beside her was Hua, who had grown into a young girl. When they pushed the door open and saw that Bufang and the others were safe, they couldn't help but sigh in relief. It was good that they were safe. They were afraid that something bad had happened to them. Swoosh. Little Hu, who was lying on Bufang's shoulder, jumped out and landed on the table. He stared at the dish Cece had placed on the table, revealing a greedy look. Then, without saying anything, he began to eat the dish on the porcelain plate. Cece curiously looked at Little Hu. "What a cute Little Hu," Cece sighed, reaching out her small hand to stroke Little Hu's head. The furry feeling made Cece giggle. "She's Little Hu, a new member of our restaurant," Bufang introduced. He rubbed Little Hu's head, then Cece's. Whether it was Little Hu or Cece, they were just kids. Realm Lord Dit and the others couldn't help but smile when they saw this warm scene. They were both physically and mentally exhausted. After finding a place to sit down, they gently exhaled. "You guys wait here. I'm going to the kitchen to cook some dishes to go with the wine. Tonight, we'll cook the great sage's goat leg." Bufang glanced at the others. Realm Lord Dit and the Zo Lords couldn't help but nod. The corners of Bufang's mouth rose. All of a sudden, Realm Lord Dit seemed to remember something. Looking at Bufang, he said, "Bufang, my little friend, hurry up and see what the Heaven Tree's spirit has given you. Open the Heaven Tree's fruit and see." Realm Lord Dit said that. The surrounding people revealed curious looks. Even Lord Go couldn't help but squint his dog eyes, looking interested. Bufang was bewildered. He nodded. His mind flickered, and the immortal tree's fruit, flickering with 7-colored radiance, appeared in his hand. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun, and the knife light fell like a shooting star. Under Bufang's knife light, the 7-colored skin of the fruit of the Heaven Tree slowly fell, revealing the appearance of the Heaven Tree's gift. Chapter 1175. When peeling, the most important thing was the technique. It was like cutting the source stone for gambling. Who knew what would come out of it? Thus, one had to be careful to avoid damaging the thing inside. Of course, Bufang didn't know any techniques for cutting gambling stones, but he had his knife skills. With his divine perception, it was easy for him to cut the fruit. As the 7-colored fruit peeled off, the thing inside was revealed. Bufang was also curious about what the spirit of the heaven tree would give to Bufang. The others were also watching curiously. Looking at the gifts that were gradually revealed, everyone's eyes widened. All of a sudden, it's here. Realm Overlord Dit's eyes brightened. The dragon bone kitchen knife in Bufang's hand paused. What is it? What gift did the heaven tree give? The people around asked curiously. Bufang's face turned serious. He used his hand to peel off the rest of the fruit. Shortly, the gift was revealed. It didn't look strange at all. It was just a golden egg. That's right. This egg was pure gold, as if it was made of pure gold. Under the light, it sparkled, looking extremely luxurious. If it weren't for the majestic vitality in this egg, Bufang would have thought that the heaven tree had given him a decorative piece of art. A golden egg? Not only Bufang, but even Realm Overlord Dit and the others were also very curious. They didn't recognize what kind of egg it was. It looks like a dragon egg. The Lord Go's eyes suddenly brightened. Staring at the golden egg, he couldn't help but drool. His nose twitched, sniffing the aura emitted from the golden egg. The Lord Go's eyes brightened. Dragon eggs taste the best, the Lord Go said. Whether it's a boiled dragon egg or a poached dragon egg, the Lord Go supports you. Bufang glanced at the Lord Go. Did this dog only have eyes for food? If this is really a dragon egg, why not hatch it and raise the dragon? Wouldn't there be an endless supply of dragon meat? Bufang analyzed seriously. His analysis was so clear and logical that the Lord Go was dumbfounded. Recently, Bufang discovered that he seemed to have unlocked a new ability, and his ability to bluff others had become first-rate. Whether it was the two little saint or the Lord Go, they were all dumbfounded. The man and the dog were discussing how to cook the golden egg. As for Realm Lord Dit and the rest, they were speechless. The spirit of the heaven tree might have made a very wrong decision. Why did it give the dragon egg to Bufang? Giving the dragon egg to Bufang? Bufang was a chef, and he had a gluttonous dog with him. Would there be a good result if the dragon egg was given to them? However, Realm Lord Dit and the others were so shocked that they sucked in a breath of cold air. This dragon egg wasn't ordinary. It contained a huge amount of energy. It was even more terrifying than the perishing pot that Bufang had used. It seemed to have gathered the terrifying energy of the entire Heaven Chief realm. The Heaven Tree had really given Bufang a big gift. Realm Lord Dit glanced at Bufang. He found that the latter was still seriously discussing with the Lord Go whether to hatch the dragon egg or not. He was speechless. As a dragon egg, shouldn't it be cherished? After a long time, the man and the dog couldn't come to a conclusion. They didn't quarrel. Bufang put the dragon egg into the heaven and earth farmland and let Nyo Hansan incubate it. After that, Bufang clasped his hands, turned around, and walked into the kitchen. He wanted to cook some dishes that went well with wine. He wanted to eat and drink, relaxing. Cece followed him in. It was a wonderful thing to have a chance to learn cooking from Bufang. The dishes weren't complicated. In just a moment, an aroma wafted out. It wasn't a strong aroma. Bufang walked out with 2 dishes, placing them on the table. A group of people gathered around, sitting around Bufang. The dishes were simple. There was a plate of pickled radish and a plate of sliced white demon beef. They all took out blue and white porcelain cup. Bufang poured wine for everyone. As the wine was poured into the porcelain cups, it bubbled and sprayed. The rich wine aroma filled the air. Just by smelling it, people felt a wave of pressure disappear and their bodies relax. What a fragrant wine! Everyone was intoxicated, sighing. They all knew that Bufang had a collection of good wine. However, it wasn't easy to drink this wine. While eating the dishes, they toasted each other, trying to taste the good wine. After a big battle, they were exhausted. However, after drinking a cup of wine, their exhaustion disappeared. Everyone felt much more relaxed. Bufang also held his wine cup, drinking it in one gulp. As the acheron of helplessness entered his stomach, Bufang's body became hot, and his pale face became ruddy. Wine had many effects, such as relieving fatigue, relaxing the mind, and so on. These effects were very obvious. However, after drinking the wine, Bufang sighed. As his strength increased, his demand for wine became higher and higher. In the past, the acheron of helplessness could satisfy him. However, as his cultivation base rose to the 9-star true immortal realm, he wasn't satisfied with the wine brewed with a leaf of acheron grass and the flower of helplessness. At least, he needed to change the wine to acheron grass, which had a higher number of leaves. Everyone was drinking and chatting. Bufang didn't stay for long. He turned around and entered the kitchen, stepping into the heaven and earth farmland. His figure flashed, and he entered the heaven and earth farmland. A gentle breeze blew, and Bufang felt somewhat comfortable. He came to the wooden house. Nyohan-san was holding the golden dragon egg, looking at it. Obviously, he had never seen a golden dragon egg in his life. It seemed he had sensed Bufang's arrival. Nyohan-san ran over excitedly, greeting him. "This is a true dragon egg. Find a chance to hatch it," Bufang said to Nyohan-san. He believed that Nyohan-san had the talent to hatch eggs. Nyohan-san was stunned. Such a difficult task. He had to find a cow to help him. "I'm not here for the dragon egg. I'm here for the leg of goat that was thrown in earlier." "Where did it go?" Bufang asked. "Leg of goat?" So, Bufang's goal was the leg of goat? That thing seemed to be very important. Nyohan-san blinked, then hurried to bring Bufang into the wooden house. The leg of goat was casually thrown in a corner of the wooden house. Bufang looked at the leg of goat that Nyohan-san had casually thrown in the corner, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. This leg of goat was the leg of a great sage expert, and it was actually thrown away here. A priceless ingredient was actually used to replenish the inventory. Bufang held the leg of goat, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Of course, this time, besides the leg of goat, he had another purpose in the heaven and earth farmland. That was to plant the seed of the 9-revolution Great Path Tea, the system's reward. The name Heavenly Path Tea sounded extraordinary. Although Bufang didn't care too much about it, he still felt that it was better to plant it. It was just right. The heaven and earth farmland had the source of the spring of life, which was the key to planting immortal ingredient. Planting the 9-revolution Great Path Tea here was definitely the best choice. The heaven tree was flourishing in front of the wooden house. Every day the heaven tree grew bigger. Perhaps it was because it grew in a different location. The heaven tree that grew from the seed of the heaven tree looked a little different from the heaven chief realm. What is the name of the heaven tree? It should have a name, right? Bufang looked at the heaven tree, suddenly curious. Curious, Bufang asked the system. In his opinion, the system should know. After all, the system was in existence like an encyclopedia. System, does this heaven tree not have a name? Willow tree, pear tree, parasol tree. It should have a name, right? Bufang asked the system as he held a hoe and dug a hole in front of the heaven tree. The system was silent for a long time, not answering Bufang immediately. After Bufang dug the pit, threw the seeds of the 9-revolution Great Path Tea tree into it, and watered it with the spring of life, the system slowly answered him. Heaven tree, scientific name, Myriad Treasures Heaven tree, a sacred grade immortal ingredient. It used to be the personal weapon of a supreme expert. The system's solemn voice rang out. Bufang's movements suddenly paused and his eyes shrank. Myriad Treasures Heaven tree? The heaven tree used to be the weapon of a supreme expert? What the hell? The system ignored Bufang's doubts and only gave Bufang an explanation. That supreme expert who used the myriad treasures heaven tree as a weapon, is he dead? Bufang thought for a moment, then asked again. As his strength increased, the system seemed to answer more and more questions. However, this time, the system didn't answer Bufang. The host's current level is not high enough to know the answer to this question. The system sternly rejected Bufang. Even so, Bufang's mind still sank for a long time. Swish, just as Bufang was deep in thought, the soil on the ground split open, and a green bud grew out. It grew rapidly, and soon it became a small tree. This small tree was only as tall as a person, and it wouldn't continue to grow. This small tree looked like a tea tree. The leaves of the tea tree had two colors, one on the front and the other on the back. This is the 9-revolution Great Path tea tree? Bufang took a deep breath, walking around the tea tree. The tea tree hadn't matured yet, so it wasn't a good time to pick the tea leaves. Bufang wasn't in a hurry, although he was curious and doubtful. However, he still asked Nyo Han-san to take good care of this Great Path tea tree. Of course, he couldn't neglect the egg. If he could hatch a baby dragon from the egg, that would be very interesting. During this process, Jing Yuan appeared in the heaven and earth farmland. She carried a wooden bucket ready to fetch milk. After all, making ice cream consumed a lot of milk, especially since Goddess City's ice cream business was booming. Basically, every day Jing Yuan would come to fetch milk. When Jing Yuan saw Bufang, she was very excited. As for Bufang, he had to go back and prepare to cook the goat leg, so he only exchanged a few words with Jing Yuan before bidding farewell and leaving the farmland. After Bufang left, Nyo Han-san began to incubate the egg. To incubate the egg, he had specially built an incubation room. It was specially built for incubating eggs. Bufang returned to the kitchen. In his hand was the goat leg that emitted a mighty pressure and nether energy. According to the Lord Go, this goat leg should be the limb of a great sage of the 9-revolution Nether Chef's clan. That great sage should be an expert of the 9-revolution Nether Chef's clan. However, during the battle, the Lord Go tore off one of his legs. Now, it seemed that the leg would become a dish on a plate. That was the most embarrassing thing. How should he make the goat leg? Bufang thought about it for a long time, but in the end, he chose to restore it to its original taste. The main reason was that the grade of the great sage's ingredient was too high, and Bufang couldn't cook it with other cooking methods. After all, in terms of cooking skills, he wasn't even a second-rank heaven chief. Of course, Bufang's cooking skills must have reached the level of a second-rank heaven chief, but the system didn't recognize it. So, Bufang could only find a chance to take the exam to become a second-rank heaven chief. He placed the goat leg in the kitchen basket. The heavenly alpine spirit spring water poured down. Bufang began to wash the leg. The great sage's ingredient was crystal clear and clean. Even if it wasn't processed, it wouldn't have much of an impact. After washing, he plucked the hair. Although it was the great sage's ingredient, he couldn't eat all the hair. And it wasn't easy to pluck the great sage's leg hair. Bufang took out the black turtle constellation wok and poured half of the spring of life into it. After boiling, the boiling spring of life bubbled. When the bubbles burst, thick steam filled the air. Bufang put the goat meat into the boiling spring of life and began to wash it. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun. After twirling the knife in his hand, Bufang took out the great sage's goat leg, which had been boiling for a while. Grabbing the hoof, Bufang held the dragon bone kitchen knife's blade. He scraped it. After being soaked in the spring of life, the great sage's leg hair softened a lot, no longer as sharp as a knife. The moment the dragon bone kitchen knife scraped, a large tuft of hair fell off. While it was hot, Bufang's movements were skillful, constantly scraping. The great sage's leg hair fell off. Finally, Bufang was stunned. Then he asked Xiao Bai to borrow the war god's stick. The slender stick, which was like a soldering iron, pierced through the goat leg, propping it up. Bufang used the dragon bone kitchen knife to make a few cuts, so that the flavor of the goat leg would soak in during the cooking process. After finishing the preparations, Bufang took a step back. Next, it was time for the real cooking. He raised his hand. A white flame hovered in his hand. With a flick of his finger, it covered the great sage's goat leg. The cooking officially began. Chapter 1176. Roast Lamb Leg. This was a big dish. Moreover, it was a troublesome dish. Roast lamb leg could be used as a banquet dish. During the imperial feast of God Vanishing Mountain, Bufang could choose to roast lamb leg. Since he didn't have the ingredients, Bufang didn't cook this dish. Today, the Lord Go and the Heaven Tree had worked together to pull the leg of the great sage down. This was the time to test Bufang's cooking skills. How to roast lamb leg was a very serious problem. He borrowed the war god's stick from Xiaobai. The hot stick pierced through the lamb leg and propped it up. Of course, he couldn't roast it directly. That way, the lamb leg would only have the pungent smell of lamb. There was no other delicious taste. Bufang took out a lot of ingredient. Now, he had planted many spirit materials and spirit herbs in his farmland, and some of the ingredients were also specially cultivated. For example, scale-tail scallion, purple garlic, sun mother ginger, and so on. Of course, there were many other ingredients. These ingredients had been made into common spices by Bufang. For this kind of barbecue dish, using spices was the best choice. Because spices could cover up the pungent smell of the ingredients, it could also make the aroma of the meat thicker and spread more easily. Bufang broke the purple garlic and cut it into small pieces. He drilled many small holes on the front and back of the lamb leg to put the purple garlic inside. Then, he added some spices and sprinkled the powder, which gave the lamb leg some flavor. It was a pickling process. Bufang sprinkled the spices and used his true energy to make the flavor of the spices permeate the lamb leg. More importantly, Bufang had a very precise grasp of the speed. He only put in 60% of the spices, and the remaining 40% was used during the roasting process to make the spices fully absorb the flavor. That way, the aroma would overflow. After all the spices were sprinkled, Bufang took out the exploding flame pepper. It was a processed exploding flame pepper, so it was very dry. Bufang took out the peppers from the exploding flame peppers and stuffed them into the holes. The early stage of preparation was complete. The next step was to roast the leg of lamb. He had borrowed Xiaobai's war god stick. The war god stick was a little hot, but the temperature wasn't high. And Bufang had used the war god stick to make a stove. It was just enough to support the leg of lamb. Placing the leg of mutton on the stove, Bufang flicked out the white flame, and it darted into the bottom of the stove. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the immortal fire flourished, and a scorching heat instantly burst forth, filling the air in an instant. There were several nozzles at the bottom of the stove. The immortal flame passed through the nozzle, causing the flames to be blazing hot and fast. The flames burned and sprayed on the leg of lamb. The leg of lamb was made from the great sage's meat. However, after being processed by Bufang, it had lost the strong defense unique to the great sage's flesh, and the pressure that belonged to the great sage had mostly been removed. The remaining bit of pressure from the great sage could actually enhance the quality of the dish. Scorching flames sprayed everywhere. As a result, the leg of lamb began to change from its original pinkish-white color to a tender pinkish color. Moreover, because of the roasting, the fat of the sheep began to seep out. The oil dripped onto the grill and made a sizzling sound. Roasted leg of lamb was actually a delicacy that required meticulous work. This was because the leg of lamb couldn't be completely cooked in one go. The meat of the leg of lamb was wide and thick. The deeper it was, the harder it was to cook. What Bufang wanted to do was not to give up on the difficult-to-ripen leg meat, but to use his divine perception to sense the ripeness of the meat. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang walked around the grill of the lamb. He didn't flip the leg of lamb. Instead, he kept roasting it on one side. The smell of volatile spices permeated the air, which was extremely fragrant. Bufang didn't know much about spices. However, he knew that it was made from many dried spirit herbs and then ground them. It could stimulate people's taste buds and enhance the texture and taste of the ingredients. For roasted dishes, spices were very important, and roasted leg of lamb required a very important spice, which was rosemary. It was different from the rosemary on Earth. Bufang had learned from the system that the rosemary needed here was a top-grade immortal ingredient, made from the dried and ground stem of the rosemary bone flower. The rosemary bone flower was highly poisonous, but its stem was fragrant. If the outer layer of the stem was peeled off, the inner layer would be the source of the flower's fragrance. The rosemary bone flower was a kind of poisonous flower. Its poison didn't come from its fragrance, but its petals. It used its fragrance to attract people and make them touch it. Once touched, the colorless and odorless poison on the petals would infect them and kill them. Even a 9-star true immortal realm expert would be poisoned to death. However, the rosemary bone flower's fragrance was not poisonous. Bufang took out a small white porcelain bottle. He opened the bottle cap. Instantly, a wave of thick aroma spread out from inside. This aroma was extremely fragrant, and there seemed to be a wave of hazy golden light drifting out of the bottle. It was the spice, rosemary. It was really fragrant. Even Bufang couldn't help but be immersed in this aroma. However, as a chef, Bufang's divine perception was very strong. Soon, he pulled his mind back. His middle finger and thumb pinched the mouth of the white porcelain bottle, slightly tilting it. His index finger gently tapped it. The rosemary incense contained in the bottle jumped out and fluttered out, sprinkling on the ground. The rosemary was pale gold, which looked very mesmerizing and dazzling. When it sprinkled on the leg of lamb, it seemed to be dyed with a layer of gold. He continued to roast it. The sound of oil splashing became louder. As the surface of the leg of lamb turned golden, a wave of meat aroma began to spread. This meat aroma was very rich. Perhaps because of the quality of the meat, it was so strong that people couldn't stand it. "It smells so good," Bufang exclaimed. Next, the roasting process was more complicated. Thus, Bufang didn't finish it in the kitchen. Instead, he carried the grill and walked out of the kitchen. She lifted the curtain at the entrance of the kitchen, and the bell jingled as it was shaken. Bufang walked out of the grill. As he walked out, the aroma of the spice, rosemary, and mutton instantly filled the air. Everyone's attention and line of sight were attracted. The people, who were resting and relaxing on their chairs, couldn't help but straighten their bodies. The moment Little Who smelled the aroma, he couldn't help but turn into a jet of white light, dashing toward the roasted leg of lamb. However, with a flick of Bufang's finger, his head was sent flying to the dining table. He rolled over and sat down on the table in a daze. Bufang placed the roasted leg of lamb on the table. He reached out his hand, gently turning the war god's stick. The entire roasted leg of lamb began to rotate slowly. Bufang changed his position. Sizzle, due to the gravity, the golden oil gently slid across the surface of the leg of lamb. Eventually, it splashed. As the oil dripped on the flame, it evaporated instantly, making the meat aroma thicker and thicker. Wisps of smoke rose from the meat. It was unknown when a dagger appeared in Bufang's hand. He used the dagger to poke the mutton from time to time to feel how cooked it was. Cece stood aside, carefully watching Bufang's movements. She could feel the mysteriousness of Bufang's movement. The time he could control the flame and the depth of the dagger when it was inserted was different. The others sat around Bufang. The arrangement of the table in Heaven Chief Restaurant was unique. Everybody stared at the grill on the table, as well as the leg of lamb inside. At this moment, the pink color of the leg of lamb had faded. It was now a pale gold color. That gold color had a thick meaty aroma. However, it wasn't enough. If it was just like that, the leg of lamb couldn't be eaten. The grilling continued. Gulp, gulp. Because of the volatilization of the spices, people could smell it, feeling a little strange. Realm Lord Dit's eyes widened. He stared at the roasted leg of lamb, taking in a breath of cold air. You use spices, right? Realm Lord Dit looked at Bufang, who was rotating the grill. He couldn't help but ask. Bufang nodded. Rosemary and other spices were essential seasonings for roasted leg of lamb. Spices are also a major category in our cuisine. However, the Heaven Chief realm has never had a systematic method to make spices. In the beginning, there was a Chilan chef who specialized in spices in Heaven Chief realm. However, since that Chilan chef was killed by the 9 Revolution clan's nether chef, the recipe of spices in Heaven Chief realm was completely lost. Realm Lord Dit sighed. Looking at the roasted leg of lamb that was glistening with a golden hue, Realm Lord Dit took a deep breath. The fragrance of spices wafted into his nostrils, causing all the pores on his body to open up. I don't know much about spices, Bufang said honestly. Spices were a major category in food. To some chefs, as long as there were spices, no matter how lowly the ingredients were, they could cook the most delicious dishes in the world. Spices were everything to this kind of chef, and the various combinations of spices were very strange to Bufang. After all, Bufang had never studied them systematically. The combination of each spices, the amount of ingredients used, and so on would make a huge difference in the flavor of the combined spices. Thus, chefs who were good at manipulating spices were very rare. As time passed, the roasted leg of lamb turned golden red, which was the color of ripeness. The golden hue had a touch of red. Then, it was almost time to wrap up. After sprinkling all the spices, Bufang took out the improved abyssal chili sauce. Scooping half a spoonful of the abyssal chili sauce into the blue and white porcelain bowl, Bufang added oil to stir the sauce. He prepared the brush, dipped it in the chili sauce, and brushed it on the roasted leg of lamb. Sizzle, the oil splashed, dripping on the flame. Instantly, it evaporated. A wave of spicy aroma spread out. The spicy aroma was mixed with the aroma of lamb. It was very mesmerizing. The people present couldn't stand it anymore, swallowing their saliva. Little Hu was restless. However, when he saw Bufang's caring gaze, he curled up into a ball. Lord Go stuck out his tongue, his eyes sparkling. Indeed, it was the right decision to give this leg of lamb to Bufang. The taste of this dish was simply irresistible. Boom! Rumble! Outside the Heaven Chief restaurant in the sky, layers of black clouds rolled over. This time, the clouds were very thick. In just a blink of an eye, they covered the entire place. In just a moment, the entire first layer of the Heaven Chief world was shrouded in black clouds. Everybody lifted their heads in surprise, looking at the sky. The Heaven Chief was cooking delicious food, and he was about to cross the lightning tribulation. However, this power didn't seem to be ordinary. When Gongshu Ban and the others saw the lightning tribulation, they were a little bewildered. A moment later, they seemed to remember something. Taking in a breath of cold air, they hurried to the Heaven Chief restaurant. Owner Bu was cooking delicious food again. Adhering to the principle of making mistakes rather than letting go, the group of people flew toward Bufang's store. Boom! 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 Terrifying lightning bolts burst out in the sky. This lightning bolt was extremely frightening. When the lightning dragon materialized, its scales seemed to be reflected very clearly. Since it was about to cross the lightning tribulation, it meant that the dish was almost done. And indeed, Bufang was almost done with this roasted leg of lamb. Of course, Bufang still wanted to make some ingredient. Scale-tail scallions. Bufang took out a lot of chopped scallions, which he washed and placed in a blue and white porcelain bowl. Besides chopped scallions, Bufang also needed to make roasted bait. Bufang took out the fragrant white rice. This rice was made from the rice that Bufang had grown in the heaven and earth farmland. Putting the rice into a bowl, he mashed it into rice paste and ground it into a round cake. Then, he placed it under the oven and roasted it until white bubbles appeared on its surface. One side was slightly yellow, while the other side had white bubbles. Just like that, the roasted bait was made. Bufang took out the roasted bait and placed them in a blue and white porcelain bowl. At the same time, Bufang began to make the sauce. While making the sauce, Bufang rotated the grill, filling the lamb leg with a warm aroma. At this moment, the golden and fragrant roasted leg of lamb was completely done. With a flick of his finger, the white flame flew to Bufang's finger, quietly burning on it. He blew a puff of air. The flame instantly dispersed. The fire was extinguished and the dish was done. The aroma spread for 10 miles. The fragrant roasted leg of lamb that people had been waiting for was finally done. Chapter 1177. The roasted leg of lamb was finally done. The aroma spread out instantly, and the room's door couldn't stop the fragrance from drifting. The strong aroma filled the air and steam rolled. The mellow aroma of the meat had an irresistible taste. That aroma completely stimulated people's taste buds and appetite. Outside the door, dark clouds rolled and thunder rumbled. A wave of majestic pressure fell, shaking everything. Xiao Bai was already standing outside the restaurant. He looked up at the sky, facing the lightning. This time, the lightning punishment was very powerful. After all, the oppressive clouds seemed to be pressing down on the city, destroying the city walls. The metal wings behind Xiao Bai spread out, and the clanging sounds echoed unceasingly. Lightning radiance shot out from his mechanical eyes. The lightning punishment fell. All of a sudden, Xiao Bai soared into the sky. A thunder dragon bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws came out of the dark clouds, as if it wanted to tear the sky apart. The terrifying pressure made people's minds tremble. It was extremely terrifying. Xiao Bai wasn't afraid of the lightning. He hovered up, raising his fist. As if he was angry enough to shake the sky, he clashed with the roaring thunder dragon. The lightning scattered, falling on the ground, causing a burst of sparks. The thunderclouds rumbled and rolled. The people around were all dumbfounded. They stood where they were, raising their heads and looking at the sky. Looking at the terrifying collision in the sky, they shuddered. Then they were so excited. 1 lightning punishment, 2 lightning punishments, 3 lightning punishments, 8 lightning punishments fell in a row. Xiao Bai's entire body was scorched, and there seemed to be lightning moving on his body. The people around had long held their breaths, not daring to breathe loudly. 8 lightning punishments. What kind of dish did Owner Bu cook this time? It could actually trigger 8 lightning punishments. Xiao Bai blocked the 8th lightning punishment. His body sank deep into the ground, and the ground cracked under his feet. Smoke billowed, and it was dark. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes suddenly opened. Light burst out, and his aura increased greatly. The dark clouds in the sky seemed to be still brewing. Everyone felt a wave of terror and disbelief. Don't tell me there are still thunderclouds? What was above the 8 lightning punishments? 9 lightning punishment. That was the legendary lightning punishment. How many years had it been since the Heaven Chief Realm had seen the 9 lightning punishment? Even if it could appear, would the current Heaven Chief Realm be able to withstand the 9 lightning punishment? As expected, the pitch-black clouds rolled and brewed for a while before finally dispersing. The 9th lightning punishment did not descend in the end. After all, the legendary realm was not that easy to break. Bufang was, after all, an immortal chef. As an immortal chef, he was able to trigger 8 lightning punishments, which was already very monstrous. If he were to trigger the 9 lightning punishments, he would incur the jealousy of the heavens. The metal wings on Xiao Bai's back retracted. Its performance was over. It strode forward, its body crackling with electric arcs as it stepped back into the restaurant. In the restaurant, When everyone sensed the end of the lightning punishment, they couldn't help but feel excited. Once the lightning punishment ended, it meant that they would be able to taste the delicacy. It was a delicacy cooked with the great sage's ingredient. It was a rare opportunity. As the great sage, how could he become someone else's ingredient that easily? It wasn't easy to get this goat leg of the great sage. Lord Go's mouth watered. The others also craned their necks, looking forward to it. Bufang didn't let them wait for long. He took out a porcelain plate. Then, he distributed the blue and white porcelain plates to everyone sitting at the table. Bufang loved blue and white porcelain plates. He thought that only this kind of plate with this kind of pattern would have a deeper meaning. Everybody took the plate, their eyes fixed on the golden roasted goat leg. A thick aroma wafted out. It wasn't just the aroma of meat, but also the aroma of spices. This aroma was so thick that people couldn't stop eating. Bufang's hand shook, and the dragon bone kitchen knife fell into his hand. His mind flickered, and the dragon bone kitchen knife's appearance changed. It turned into a golden dagger. The golden dagger was sharp, and the handle was engraved with a dragon pattern, which showed its grade. Of course, these were all secondary. The reason why Bufang used the dragon bone kitchen knife to cut the meat was that he was more familiar with it, so he could use it more easily. The next step was to cut the goat leg, which was also a very important process. Playing with the dragon bone kitchen knife that had turned into a dagger, Bufang took out the roasted bait from the blue and white porcelain bowls and gave it to the others. The roll of the roasted bait was to be eaten with the roasted goat. After cutting the goat leg and wrapping it with the roasted bait, it was dipped in the sauce, and then stuffed into the mouth. Bite down. The aroma of the rice, the lamb, and the sauce burst out at the same time. The three flavors blended, forming an indescribable taste. Of course, it could also be eaten without the roasted bait. Tasting mutton alone was actually a different kind of experience. Of course, this choice depended on the diner. Bufang was more inclined to use the roasted bait and eat it with it. After all, the rice used for the roasted bait was grown in his heaven and earth farmland. Naturally, it was extraordinary, and it contained a powerful will of the great path. Bufang boy, hurry up and give Lord Go a piece of meat. I can't hold it any more, Lord Go said, placing both of his paws on the table, looking at Bufang. Bufang looked at Lord Go, the corners of his mouth rising. Then, the dagger turned and Bufang grabbed it. The way Bufang held the dagger was different from the normal way. The blade of the dagger was facing him, and he turned his palm upward to hold the dagger. It was close to the fragrant leg of lamb, which was steaming hot and filled the air. The surface of the leg of lamb had been roasted by Bufang until it was golden yellow. Drops of oil dripped from it, splashing on the ground. Bufang carefully sized up the leg of lamb, then tried to find a good spot to cut it. Twirling the war god's stick, Bufang finally found a good spot. Holding the dagger horizontally, he slowly sliced a small piece of mutton with the direction of the blade facing inward. Holding the dagger horizontally, Bufang's eyes scanned it, then he swung it. That piece of lamb emitted a fragrant aroma, falling into Lord Go's porcelain plate. Lord Go's eyes brightened. Without saying anything, he swung his tail at the porcelain plate. That piece of lamb entered his mouth instantly. Woo, 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 woo. Lord Go was intoxicated. The taste of the great sage great ingredient was incomparable. The meat was soft and fragrant, and the spices permeated it, making it extremely delicious. Moreover, it was smeared with a layer of abyssal chili sauce, giving the lamb an abyssal spiciness. This spiciness seemed to be able to corrode one's soul, making one's entire body shiver. In just 2 or 3 bites, the lamb was swallowed. Lord Go's tongue even licked the porcelain plate, which was stained with oil and fragrance. Bufang boy, Lord Go wants more, Lord Go said, sticking his tongue out. However, Bufang just glanced at him, not saying anything. The dagger continued to cut, and soon, a piece of lamb was cut. That piece of lamb was then handed to you. Yu squinted, smiling as she received it. She chose to eat the lamb wrapped in roasted bait. She didn't want to waste any of the food Bufang had prepared. Xiaobao was a piece of flatbread made from cooked rice that was mashed into rice paste and then made into a round flatbread. It was placed on the oven to be barbecued. When one side was barbecued and the other side turned yellow, it could be taken out of the oven. This kind of bread was extremely soft and fragrant, completely emitting the fragrance of rice. When the lamb was placed in the bread, the top and bottom of the bread exploded, forming a semicircle. The lamb was in the middle of the bread, and the oil was absorbed by the bread. You used a blue and white porcelain spoon to scoop up the sauce in front of her. This sauce was specially prepared by Bufang, so you naturally didn't want to let it go. She scooped up a spoonful of sauce and shook it on the bread. It seeped in through the gap, mixing with the lamb. It looked extremely appetizing. The people around swallowed their saliva, staring at Yu and the piece of bread in Yu's hand. Bufang raised his head, glancing at Yu. The corners of his mouth rose. This way of eating was correct and interesting. The knife in Bufang's hand flashed. His movements were gentle and slow. He wanted to maintain the integrity of the whole piece of lamb. The surface of the lamb was the most delicious and tasty. After cutting the surface of the lamb and distributing it to the people, Bufang continued to roast the lamb using the remaining heat of the oven, so that the cut part of the lamb could continue to taste. As for the others, they began to taste the food. Yu held the roasted bait. Her red lips parted slightly, opening her mouth to take a bite. Crunch, the surface of the roasted bait was crispy, and the inside was soft and moist. When his teeth collided with the flatbread, he felt a warmth that stirred his mind. When they continued to bite, it was the hot lamb. The unique flavor of lamb filled the air. Although it was rich, it wasn't appetizing. With the delicious sauce, it seemed to sublimate the taste. It was as if the taste had been sublimated. Eating it made one's entire body tremble. Bufang looked at the people happily eating the roasted lamb, and he couldn't help but be in a trance. This delicacy reminded him of a famous snack from his previous life. Rujiamo. If he had time, Bufang could make a rujiamo. Moreover, there were so many gourmet arrays, so Bufang could continue to play with the death food tool. This rujiamo could be included in the death food tool. Bufang cut a piece of lamb, opened his mouth, and used the dagger to pour the lamb into his mouth. The lamb slid across the dagger, and Bufang's tongue rolled it up, putting it into his mouth. Bufang bit it. The texture of the meat was just right. The flavor of the spices, the aroma of the purple garlic, and the enchanting taste of the rosemary burst out in his mouth, making Bufang feel intoxicated. Together with the delicious abyssal chili sauce, this lamb seemed to have magic. It was indeed worthy of being the ingredient of the great sage. The taste was indeed different. If he used other lamb legs, although the taste wouldn't be bad, it would always lack a kind of meaning. The great sage's ingredient contained majestic essence energy and life energy. As they ate, they breathed essence energy from their mouth. This essence energy was thick and didn't dissipate, wrapping around their mouths. It seemed to be constantly nourishing their bodies. The people, who were tired from the battle, felt that their bodies had reached their peak at this moment. Roasted lamb, good wine, the aroma of wine and meat filled the air. It floated out of the restaurant's door. Instantly, the entire immortal city was shrouded in the aroma. After a long time, the whole roasted leg of lamb was eaten as it was roasted, and it was eaten cleanly. Bufang was also very diligent in cutting the leg bone, trying his best to keep it as clean as possible. Every strand of mutton on the leg bone was cut clean, leaving the bone spotlessly white and flawless. After a delicious meal, everyone lay comfortably on their chairs, essence energy filling their nostrils and mouths. The great sage's roasted lamb leg was enough for them to savor for several days. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, they left lazily. The crisis of the Heaven Chief realm was over, and they felt much more relaxed. The will of the great path had returned, and the heaven tree was revived. In a short period of time, the immortal cooking realm had shown a scene of vitality. Of course, when Realm Overlord Dit was humming a tune and about to leave the Heaven Chief restaurant, he seemed to think of something. He turned his head and said to Bufang, who was cleaning the lamb leg, "Bufang, my little friend, your cooking skills have long surpassed the immortal chef level. It's time for you to take the higher level Heaven Chief test. That way, you can get more resources and have a deeper understanding of cooking," Realm Overlord Dit said. Bufang grabbed the lamb leg, looking at Realm Overlord Dit in surprise. Bufang knew clearly that his cooking skills had long surpassed the immortal chef level. He had to take the test. Whether it was for honor or to get more resources, Bufang shouldn't give up the test. "I will go." Bufang nodded. Realm Overlord Dit heard Bufang's reply. Instantly, he grinned, flipping his blonde hair. "I'll host your test myself." Then, Realm Overlord Dit strode away. Bufang pouted his lips. After the others had left, he closed the restaurant's door. The entire restaurant was filled with the aroma of the lamb. Bufang took a deep breath, stretching his body. After Lord Dog had eaten his fill, he had already laid down at the side and was snoring away. Hua stayed by Lord Go's side. Looking at this warm scene, Bufang felt a little relaxed. After packing his things, Bufang went upstairs. Yu clasped her hands, her long dress fluttering as she followed him. Shortly, the two of them reached the room on the second floor. They opened the door to each other and entered their respective rooms. Through the crack in the door, Nethery saw Bufang close the door, so she gently closed it. Chapter 1178. Swoosh. In the bathroom, the dense steam rolled slowly under the light. The dim yellow light sprinkled down, and the water splashed. Bufang walked out of the bathroom, feeling refreshed. He was wearing a bathrobe, which was wrapped around his body, revealing a bit of his white chest. His wet hair, under the wiping of the cloth, gradually dispersed the water splashes. Bufang stretched out his hand, spread his fingers, and ran through his hair. There was a bit of coldness at the tip of his hair. Bufang's face showed some satisfaction. He gently exhaled, took a step forward, and sat on the soft bed. It had been a long time since he had such a comfortable rest. Bufang also had some nostalgia. After sitting on the bed for a while, Bufang got up and went to the window. The window was wide open, and a breeze blew in from outside, blowing on Bufang's face, making him feel a little comfortable and relaxed. Leaning against the window, Bufang propped himself up with one hand, stroking his chin. His eyes followed the window and looked out. The brightly lit immortal city was very lively. Even at night, it still looked like a city that never slept. The crisis of the Heaven Chief realm had passed, and the whole Heaven Chief realm was filled with celebration. The city lord of the first layer of the Heaven Chief realm, Gongshu Baiguang, made the whole city celebrate. Many Heaven Chief realms held a banquet and held a cooking ceremony. The whole city was filled with a rich aroma. For the people of the Heaven Chief realm, besides celebrating with food, what else could they use to celebrate? Feeling the night wind blowing, smelling the aroma of the dishes in the air. Bufang's state of mind was also slightly calmer. After a long time, Bufang closed the window. Returning to the bed, lying on the bed, he covered himself with a quilt. The soft quilt was comfortable and comfortable. Bufang closed his eyes and after a while, he started snoring. His mind relaxed, Bufang couldn't help but fall asleep. The night passed without a word. The next day, the sunlight shone through the window and shone on Bufang's face, making him squint his eyes slightly. Messy hair spread on the bed, Bufang straightened up, stretched, yawned, and rubbed his sleepy eyes. He got up and went to the bathroom to wash up before walking out of the room. He went to the kitchen. In the kitchen, there were already sounds of people bustling about. Bufang was slightly stunned. He looked over and saw Cece, who was wearing a chef robe, practicing her knife skills and cooking delicious food. As if she had seen Bufang, Cici raised her head and revealed a sweet smile. Teacher Bu, you're awake. Cici smiled and said. Bufang nodded, glanced at Cici, and touched her head. Then, he walked to his stove, took out a kitchen knife, and began to practice his knife skills. When Cici saw that Bufang was so hard-working, she felt a burst of excitement in her heart. When people who were better than you worked harder than you, what reason do you have to continue to be a salted fish? Hence, Cici also followed Bufang's rhythm and began to practice her cooking skills. Heaven Chief Realm, 5th floor. The 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm was a mess. Only a heaven tree stood proudly, its huge canopy covering the sky. A fresh and clean wind blew over. It rolled up the yellow sand of the 5th floor. Sand and stones rolled, fluttering in the wind. Realm Lord Dit Yaya, City Lord Mengqi, Zhou Lords. The 4 of them landed on the ground of the 5th floor that had been turned into ruins. There was only yellow sand left in the 5th floor. However, with the heaven tree, it shouldn't be a problem to turn it into green land again. The heaven tree had brought new hope and a new future to the Heaven Chief Realm. From today onwards, all cooking competitions in the Heaven Chief Realm will be changed to chef's challenges. Also, individual chef's challenges are encouraged. We've been living in peace for too long and we've lost our edge. Sooner or later, we will suffer a disaster. Realm Lord Dit clasped his hands. The wind blew, making his yellow hair flutter. City Lord Mengqi and the others nodded. Although the bronze gate is sealed by the heaven tree's branches, it won't last long. We must become stronger. Only then can we protect our home. Realm Lord Dit said in a low voice. Only after experiencing despair could one understand how precious a peaceful home was. All right, the restoration and repair of the 5th floor won't be done overnight. Take your time. There's no need to rush. Realm Lord Dit said. After that, they left the 5th layer of the immortal cooking realm. The 4th and 5th floors merged into one. Now, the 4th floor of the Heaven Chief Realm was no longer there. From the 5th floor, they directly went to the 3rd floor of the Heaven Chief Realm. Mengqi was now the city lord of the 3rd floor of the Heaven Chief Realm. Zhou Jieluan was the city lord of the 2nd floor of the Heaven Chief Realm. As for the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm, Yaya was the city lord. As for the 1st floor of the Heaven Chief Realm, Gongshu Baiguang was still the city lord. However, with the resurrection of the Heaven Tree, everyone could feel that the Heaven Chief Realm was different. The immortal energy slowly became denser, and cultivation seemed to become easier. Perhaps as time passed, more powerful geniuses would be born in the Heaven Chief Realm. Days passed slowly. Almost a month had passed. These days, Bufang was not in a hurry to take the test. After being busy for such a long time, he also needed to rest. The Heaven Chief restaurant was crowded every day. As the great demon, who was famous in the Heaven Chief Realm, many people would travel thousands of miles to come here, just to taste Bufang's dishes. As for Bufang, after cooking the required dishes every day, he would leisurely pull a chair and sit at the entrance of the restaurant, basking in the sun and taking a nap. At night, Bufang would go to the kitchen to study new dishes. Of course, he would occasionally go to the Heaven and Earth farmland to study new death food tools and so on. For example, he had thought of the Rigiamo and the Gourmet Array and so on. Of course, these still needed to be studied. A month's time was not long, but it was not short either. After resting for so long, Bufang's mental state had recovered to its peak. His cooking skills had reached their peak. Heaven and Earth farmland. The wind was blowing. The sound of grass rustling reverberated. Bufang went there, taking a deep breath of fresh air that could cleanse his heart and lungs. Then, he came to the wooden house. In front of the wooden house, the many treasures Heaven Tree and the 9 Revolution Great Path Tea Tree were growing luxuriantly. The treasure-snatching Heaven Tree seemed to have green fruits. After growing for a while they would bear fruit. And the 9 Revolution Great Path Tea Tree was growing luxuriantly. The will of the Great Path flowed on it, spreading an aura that made people feel refreshed. Bufang reached out his hand, plucking a tea leaf. This tea leaf had two colors. The front was green and the back was light blue. The edge of the tea leaf was jagged. Bufang held the tea leaf with both hands, carefully studying it. The tea leaf emitted a faint fragrance. Putting the tea leaf into his mouth, he gently bit it. A bitter taste with a little sweetness spread in his mouth. As the tea entered his mouth, Bufang felt like his mental energy was boiling like a pot of boiling water. His eyes suddenly brightened. Bufang also felt that this tea leaf was extraordinary. He planned to make tea with these tea leaves. Of course, he couldn't use these raw tea leaves to make tea. The 9-revolution Great Path tea tree was definitely extraordinary. Bufang took out a blue and white porcelain bowl, which was shaped like an arc carefully. He plucked the tea leaves from the 9-revolution Great Path tea tree. Then, he put it into the bowl. After filling it to the brim, Bufang gave up on plucking. Putting away the bowl, Bufang planned to return to the Heaven Chief restaurant to process the tea leaf. Think about it. Sitting in front of the restaurant, watching the flowers bloom and wither, waiting for the clouds to gather and disperse. Then, holding a cup of hot tea with its fragrance, he would take a sip. That feeling was really wonderful. Jing Yuan and Nyo Han-san came from afar, talking and laughing. Jing Yuan held a bucket in her hand which was filled with milky milk. The fragrance of the milk filled the air. When Bufang saw Jing Yuan, he asked her about the Fong Fong ice cream shop. Then, he asked Jing Yuan to leave. As time passed, the sales of the Fong Fong ice cream shop began to decline. It was mainly because the novelty had passed, and the women in Goddess City weren't so enthusiastic about spending. However, although it had declined, the daily sales were still at a considerable level. Bufang was very satisfied. At least, compared to the Heaven Chief restaurant, the Fong Fong ice cream shop sales were much better. The competition in Goddess City wasn't big, unlike the Heaven Chief world. Even though Bufang had the title of the Great Demon, many diners would choose other restaurants. Since there were too many choices, the turnover was much lower than that of the Fong Fong ice cream shop. After sending off Jing Yuan, Bufang asked Nyo Han-san about the death food tool. Currently, the death food tool was mainly studied by Nyo Han-san. This bowl could add the will of the great path of the heaven and earth farmland into the ingredients, which was the key to making the death food tool. Then, Bufang gave the gourmet array to Nyo Han-san. Today, Nyo Han-san wore his self-made crystal glasses every day, studying the death food tool. His latest goal was to become infatuated with the imprisonment of formation. He felt that this array wasn't useless. It was actually very useful. However, he hadn't found a suitable array carrier yet. In other words, he needed food that could support this array. Nyo Han-san and Bufang had tried many delicacies, such as ramen, soup dumplings, and so on. However, none of them worked. Although the confinement array didn't look very violent, it had very strict requirements for the food carrier. Ordinary food simply couldn't withstand the power of the array and would directly explode. Perhaps it didn't explode, but it couldn't display the power of the array. Both of them knew that this was a long process. Bufang and Nyo Han-san discussed for a long time. Then, Bufang said goodbye to Nyo Han-san and left the heaven and earth farmland. Bufang returned to the restaurant. He stretched his body. Then, he stepped into the kitchen. Bufang clasped his hands, deep in thought. 1 month ago, Realm Lord Dit told him that he should go and test his cooking skills. Previously, there were many things to be done in the Heaven Chief realm, and Bufang was too lazy to go. Now that 1 month had passed, Bufang felt that it was about time for him to take the test. Of course, before that, Bufang still planned to process the tea leaves he brought out of the heaven and earth farmland. He concluded that the 9-revolution Great Path tea leaves would give him a different surprise. Making tea was a complicated and tedious process, and it required a lot of effort. In fact, tea leaves could also be used as ingredient. Many delicacies use tea leaves as supplementary ingredient. For example, tea eggs, steamed braised pork with tea, longjing shrimp, and so on. These delicacies were all related to tea. Thus, making a good tea was actually very important to Bufang. His mind flickered, and he took out the blue and white porcelain bowl. After filling the bowl with tea leaves, Bufang poured them out, spreading them on the table. There was only one 9-revolution Great Path tea tree, so it naturally didn't produce many tea leaves. Although Bufang filled the bowl, there were only 81 tea leaves, which was exactly the number of 9 by 9. However, although there were only 81 tea leaves, the spirit energy and energy of the tea leaves were incomparably strong. He took out the black turtle constellation wok. Heating the wok. There was no oil in the wok. He just preheated it. After the wok was preheated, Bufang threw the 81 tea leaves into the wok. Covering his hand with a layer of true energy, Bufang used his hand to rub the tea leaves in the wok. As he rubbed them, the surging tea aroma filled the air, the tea aroma filled the air. As the tea aroma spread, there seemed to be a mysterious fluctuation spreading. In the tea aroma, there seemed to be chanting and scriptures floating in the air. Without a doubt, this tea was extraordinary. Chapter 1179. Making tea was a complicated and tedious process. Bufang wasn't very familiar with making tea, but he had his own way of making tea. He put the tea leaves into the black turtle constellation wok. He didn't add oil in the wok to dry the tea leaves. As soon as the tea leaves entered the wok, the water in the tea leaves began to evaporate. Bufang rubbed the tea leaves with his palms, causing the tea aroma to diffuse and become moist. The thick tea aroma contained a refreshing taste, which seemed to be able to clear people's minds. After stir-frying for a while, Bufang scooped out the tea leaves that had been stir-fried into thin strips. A white flame rose from his palms, slowly burning. These tea leaves floated above the flame. Under the scorching heat, the water in them evaporated. Finally, he took out a small round porcelain bowl, placing the dried tea leaves into the bowl one by one. He closed the lid. The appearance of these tea leaves was excellent, and Bufang did not need to do any processing. Each tea leaf had 2 colors. One was dark green and the other was light blue. Bufang put away the porcelain bowl and took out a tea leaf. After stir-frying and drying, this tea leaf had shrunk into a small strip. It was crystal clear, like colored glass, incomparably beautiful and beautiful. Bufang took out a special tea-making cup, placing the tea leaves into it. Then, he poured the boiled life water into it. Swish! As the dense steam entered the bowl, the tea leaves swirled inside. As soon as the life spring was poured in, the clear water turned dark green. Bufang closed the lid. Letting the tea brew for a few minutes, he opened the lid. His nose touched the lid, smelling the tea aroma. A faint, dreamlike aroma arose, tickling Bufang's taste buds. Bufang was quite amazed. This 9-revolution Great Path tea didn't need to pour out the water from the first brew to brew it a second time. The tea he brewed for the first time was already excellent. The thick tea aroma diffused, with some tea foam on the surface. The tea leaves spun and spun in circles. Bufang held the teacup in one hand and the lid of the teacup in the other. He gently blew on it, causing the rising steam to be blown away. He gently rubbed the lid of the teacup a few times. Blow a puff of air and shake your head from side to side. The refreshing fragrance of the tea wafted into his nose. Sizzle! He took a sip of tea. The boiling hot tea flowed down his lips and into his mouth. The fragrance of the tea instantly exploded in his mouth and filled the air, making Bufang feel an indescribable satisfaction. Bufang closed his eyes, feeling the aroma of the tea swirling in his mouth and assaulting his nose. He gulped down the tea in his mouth. The boiling hot tea flowed down his throat and quickly entered his stomach. Suddenly, the tea seemed to explode, causing sparkles to spread in Bufang's abdomen. An invisible wave of fluctuation instantly spread throughout Bufang's body, making him feel incomparably relaxed. At this moment, the mental energy in his spirit sea surged, as though it had received a boost. This 9-revolution Great Path tea actually worked on mental force. Bufang narrowed his eyes. Bufang smacked his lips and took another sip of tea. This tea was not like wine. Wine was mellow, but tea was the kind of fragrance that needed to be carefully tasted. After taking another sip, Bufang could feel that his mental force seemed to have become more abundant. If his guess was right, this 9-revolution Great Path tea should have the effect of helping to restore mental force. This effect made Bufang's eyes light up. Now, after using the perishing pot, Bufang could take another sip of the 9-revolution Great Path tea and stand up to use the perishing pot again. Bufang was very happy. Holding the tea, he savored it as he walked out of the kitchen. He lifted the curtain of the kitchen, and immediately, a tinkling sound rang out. As soon as he came out, the tables around the kitchen door were already full of diners. When they saw Bufang, they all greeted him. Bufang nodded at them, signaling them to eat and drink. Then, with one hand clasped behind his back and the other holding a cup of tea, he walked out. He walked to the front of the restaurant, pulled a chair over, and sat down, drinking tea and taking a nap. The restaurant's business continued. Today, Bufang let Cici be in charge of the business. This little girl's cooking skills had improved too fast. Perhaps it was because she was too talented. Today, Cici was no weaker than an ordinary immortal chef. This time, Bufang planned to take Cici to the cooking test after she finished today's business. Taking advantage of this time, Bufang took a rest. Soon today's business hours were over. It was unknown when Cici had come to Bufang's side, but Bufang was still holding the empty teacup, staring blankly. "It's over." Coming to his senses, Bufang looked at Cici, saying. Cici couldn't help but nod. Bufang stood up, putting away the teacup, and stretched his body. His spirit, energy, and spirit seemed to be awakened at this moment. He rubbed Cici's head. Under Cici's expectant eyes, Bufang grinned, saying, "Let's go. We're going to take the cooking test." After Bufang said that, Cici excitedly clenched her fist. Becoming a heaven chief had always been Cici's first dream. Cici's second dream was to become a great heaven chief like Teacher Bu. He closed the door of the restaurant. Bufang held Cici's little hand, walking out of the restaurant. Walking on the long street of the heaven chief world, two shadows, one big and one small, were stretched out. The familiar street was still so lively. Everyone knew Bufang, so they greeted Bufang. Bufang raised the corner of his mouth, nodding to them to return the greeting. The chef test had to be done in the Heaven Chief Hall. When Bufang went to the Heaven Chief Hall for the first time, he caused a big commotion. Today, Bufang went to the Heaven Chief Hall again to take a higher-level chef test. During this time, too many things had happened in the Heaven Chief world. Cici was curious about everything. This was the first time she came to the Heaven Chief Hall, so she hid behind Bufang. Of course, the people in the Heaven Chief Hall knew Bufang. Although Mu Luer didn't help in the Heaven Chief Hall, the big commotion Bufang had made everyone in the Heaven Chief world remember Bufang. As soon as Bufang stepped into the Heaven Chief Hall, many people from the Heaven Chief Hall came to greet him. Many people from the Immortal Kitchen Pavilion came over and respectfully bowed to Bufang. With Bufang's cooking skills, he deserved their respect. Whether it was the title of the Heaven Chief Competition Champion or his action of saving the Heaven Chief world from a crisis, he deserved their respect. "This is my apprentice chef. It's her first time to take the first-class Heaven Chief test. Take her with you." Bufang glanced at an expert in the Heaven Chief Hall. The expert in the Heaven Chief Hall nodded respectfully. "Cici, don't be nervous. Stay calm. With your cooking skills, becoming an immortal chef is just a piece of cake." Bufang rubbed Cici's head and said. The experts in the Heaven Chief Hall were speechless. As expected of the great demon, he was really domineering. Cece was only 7 or 8 years old at most. Such a young child, coming here to take the test was just a formality. How could it be easy to become an immortal chef? The record of the Heaven Chief World. The youngest person to become an immortal chef was a 10-year-old genius. Cece looked only 7 or 8 years old. Did she want to break the record? Even if she wanted to break the record, it was not as simple as taking something out of her pocket. After all, she was just a child. Little Hu lay on Bufang's shoulder, curled up and sleeping soundly. Cece seemed a little simple. Bufang picked up Little Hu and put him in Cece's arms. Let Little Hu accompany you. You won't be nervous this way. Go, let's take the test together. When we go back, I will cook a big meal for you. Bufang rubbed Cece's head and said with a smile. Cece nodded and felt much more relaxed. Rubbing Little Hu's head, she followed the expert in the Heaven Chief Hall and left. The Heaven Tree had recovered, and the Heaven Chief World had been restored. Today, the Heaven Chief Hall had become more and more lively. Perhaps because of the recovery of the will of the Great Path, more and more people came to take the Heaven Chief test. Moreover, they were getting younger and younger. The golden age of the Heaven Chief World seemed to be coming. Bufang glanced around and saw many children who were a little older than Cece standing together, waiting for the test. The expert in the Heaven Chief World was respectfully leading the way. He was even a little reserved. After all, he was facing the great demon of the Heaven Chief World. Owner Bu, what level do you want to test in the Heaven Chief today? The second grade Heaven Chief World? The expert in the Heaven Chief Hall asked. He put his hands behind his back and walked at a steady pace. You can say that. Let's take the second grade Heaven Chief World first, Bufang said. The expert in the Heaven Chief Hall was speechless. The record of when Bufang became an immortal chef was still there. It had only been half a year since Bufang became an immortal chef. Now Bufang was going to take the second grade Heaven Chief World. He was indeed worthy of being the great demon. Okay, follow me. The Pavilion Master, the Deacon, the City Lord, and the Realm Lord are all waiting for you. The expert in the Heaven Chief Hall didn't say anything else, just leading the way. After a while, he brought Bufang into a splendidly decorated room. Squeak! The door of the room was opened. Bufang stepped in. Instantly, everyone's eyes in the room shot over, falling on Bufang's body. In the next moment, gasps resounded in the surroundings. So familiar. That guy. Looks like the Great Demon. The Great Demon also came to take the second grade Heaven Chief World? This is going to be interesting. Nowadays, there are so many monstrous geniuses coming to take the second grade Heaven Chief World. Rustling noises resounded in the room. Many people were whispering to each other. Their gazes fell on Bufang, and all sorts of feelings welled up in their hearts. There were complicated feelings, admiration, respect, and provocation. After the renovation of the Heaven Chief World, there was only one Heaven Chief Hall, which was the Heaven Chief Hall on the first layer. All the monstrous geniuses in the Heaven Chief World would take the test in the Heaven Chief Hall on the first layer. The Heaven Chief Hall on the other layers had been cancelled. So, today, the first layer of the Heaven Chief World had gathered many geniuses. Geniuses were all arrogant. He knew the fame of Bufang, the great demon, and he also knew that Bufang was the champion of the Heaven Chief World competition. But so what? Bufang still wanted to take the second grade Heaven Chief World test. If they could suppress the great demon in the test, then their fame might spread throughout the entire Heaven Chief World. This was what made these geniuses excited. Bufang put his hands in his pockets, ignoring these gazes that contained many emotions. His gaze swept across. It landed in the distance. There, the Realm Lord of Dit leaned lazily on the chair. Gongshu Baiguang sat respectfully next to the Realm Lord. As for Mengqi, she wore an immortal robe and looked like an immortal. She was now the Pavilion Master of the Heaven Chief Hall, and her status was respected. Not only was she the City Lord of the third layer, but she was also the pavilion master of the Heaven Chief Hall. Many admiring gazes were cast on her. Mengqi had a faint smile on her face. She seemed to feel Bufang's gaze. Mengqi gently nodded at Bufang. The Heaven Chief world has gone through a tribulation. Now that it has passed the tribulation, it will definitely show its brilliance. The Heaven Tree will recover, the immortal Qi will return, the geniuses will awaken, and the evildoers will fight for glory. You are the future of the Heaven Chief world, the hope of the Heaven Chief world. This test will determine your future. Gongshu Baiguang, as the city lord, was in charge of this test. Nowadays, the Heaven Chief World Test was only held at a fixed time, once a month. It was very serious. The contestants who participated in the test couldn't help but feel nervous. This time, there are 10 people participating in the second-grade Heaven Chief Test. The test will set a question, and everyone will cook within the prescribed range. The dishes you cook will be evaluated by the heavenly will of the Heaven Chief World. The result of the evaluation will determine the result of your test. It will be fair and open. Gongshu Baiguang said. Now the test begins. The Realm Lord will announce the topic of this second-grade Heaven Chief Test. As his voice fell, everyone's eyes fell on the lazy Realm Lord Dit. Realm Lord Dit flicked his golden hair, his handsome face revealing a smile that could make young girls yearn for love. He glanced at the audience and said, "Finally, the second-grade Heaven Chief Test. I'm looking forward to it." Realm Lord Dit said. Then, he gave Bufang a deep look. A moment later, the corners of his mouth rose. His eyes were full of playfulness. As for the topic of this second-grade Heaven Chief Test, this Realm Lord has already thought about it a month ago. This time, the topic is, well, dried pot. Realm Lord Dit's words fell. The audience was stunned, then burst into an uproar. Mengqi was speechless, rolling her eyes. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched, speechlessly looking at the complacent Realm Lord Dit. This guy. Is he going to cause trouble? Chapter 1180. The proposition was dried pot. Realm Lord Dit was really naughty. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. He glanced speechlessly at the delighted Realm Lord Dit in the distance. Is this guy stupid? What's the point of being mischievous? If he made a perishing pot, the entire first level of the Heaven Chief realm would be destroyed. Then, what kind of test would he need? However, Bufang should also understand Realm Lord Dit's intention. This guy just wanted to be naughty and seek excitement. After all, the power of the perishing pot was so terrifying, but he had never tasted it. This was the point. Realm Lord Ditai was probably curious and wanted to have a taste of the perishing pot. Of course, Realm Lord Dit also understood that Bufang would remove the destructive power of the perishing pot and leave only the delicious perishing pot. Therefore, Realm Lord Dit's confidence made Bufang feel a little conflicted. Mengqi rolled her eyes. Without a doubt, she also understood the Realm Lord's naughty thoughts. Bufang's perishing pot was a terrifying weapon that could even kill the little saint. This guy actually wanted Bufang to cook a perishing pot. If Bufang hadn't removed the destructive power, it would have exploded with just one bite. Let's see how the Realm Lord will deal with this. The others around were also excited. Of course, they didn't know about Bufang's ultimate weapon, the perishing pot. They were simply excited because of this proposition. In fact, Bufang didn't know many people in this test. For example, Gongshu Ban and the others weren't here. His opponents in the Heaven Chief realm didn't have a breakthrough either. On the contrary, many Heaven Chief realm lords that Bufang didn't know were preparing to break through. Therefore, there were many people in the audience that Bufang was familiar with. Xianyuan Shihui, Gongshu Ban, and the others were all sitting there. The proposition is perishing pot? Perishing pot. What a strange proposition. As expected of the second-grade Heaven Chief Realm Lord's test. It's already such a difficult proposition. I've never cooked a perishing pot before. What if I fail? The contestants were a little flustered, mainly because Realm Lord didn't follow the rules and asked them to cook a perishing pot. Although dried pot was a major category of delicacies, and there were similar delicacies in the immortal cooking realm, very few people actually cooked dried pot. They didn't know much about this dish. Now that it had suddenly become the topic of the examination, they could only say one thing: how crafty. Lord of Bufang of Bu of the test. Bufang, on the other hand, was somewhat speechless and bored. Bufang was too familiar. Bufang. Of Bu. The original form of the perishing pot was a dried pot cabbage with a gourmet array. As for the cabbages, he chose the Fireheart cabbage, which contained the will of the great path, which he had grown in his farmland. It was a very high-grade ingredient, so it was naturally extraordinary. Actually, the craftsmanship was not difficult. The main difficulty of this dish was how to carve the gourmet array in it. Glancing at Realm Lord Bufang's lips suddenly curled up. Didn't this guy want to eat dried pot? Then let him have his fill. The gourmet array didn't just have explode. All right, the topic has been decided. Now everyone, please return to your seats. You have the time it takes to brew half a cup of tea to think about the dish you are going to cook. The time limit for this dish is 1 incense stick. If you fail to cook it after that time, you will be disqualified. Gongshu Baiguang said seriously. All the contestants were boiling with excitement. Gongshu Ban sat in the audience stand, excitedly clenching his fists. I didn't expect that the topic this time would be dried pot. Realm Lord His Excellency is so bold. Gongshu Ban said excitedly. Xianyuan Shehui, Xianyuan Xian, and the others all looked at him in confusion. Gongshu Ban saw the confusion in their eyes, and he became even more excited. To satisfy their thirst for knowledge, Gongshu Ban planned to teach them about Owner Bu's killing move, the perishing pot, the death food tool. After that, Gongshu Ban vividly described the scene of Bufang throwing a perishing pot in the 5th layer of the immortal cooking realm, blowing up the mighty existence behind the bronze gate into a bloody mess. The extremely terrifying perishing pot had the power to destroy the world, and Gongshu Ban described it as the #1 killing weapon in the entire world. This caused Xianyuan Shehui and the others to be stunned. Then, they all got a hold of themselves. They sucked in a breath of cold air. So, Realm Lord His Excellency wants to taste Owner Bu's perishing pot? How much courage does he have? Xianyuan Xian covered her red lips, saying in disbelief. That's why I, Gongshu Ban, admire Realm Lord His Excellency's courage like a surging river. Realm Lord His Excellency is definitely an existence that stands at the top of the food chain. For delicious food, he dares to face everything. Gongshu Ban exclaimed. Xianyuan Shehui rubbed her chin. Owner Bu wouldn't cook that kind of explosive perishing pot. After all, it's a killing weapon. Owner Bu wouldn't use it on Realm Lord His Excellency. Gongshu Ban and the others nodded, thinking that what Xianyuan Shehui said made sense. It was true that Bufang wouldn't cook a perishing pot. He just needed to cook a perishing pot under normal circumstances and not carve the gourmet array into it. However, seeing Realm Lord Dit shaking his head, Bufang felt that he had to teach Realm Lord Dit some principles of how to conduct himself. Now the test begins. He didn't pay attention to the chattering crowd. Gongshu Baiguang announced the start of the test. As soon as he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room instantly changed. Everyone tensed up. With a flicker of their minds, they summoned their stoves and smashed them on the ground. Rumbling sounds resounded unceasingly. These young people were suppressing their anger. They wanted to become famous in one fell swoop. As long as they could suppress the great demon in this test, when the news spread out, their fame would spread throughout the entire Heaven Chief realm. Therefore, they were all prepared to fight Bufang with all their might. The cooking began. The eyes of each Heaven Chief fell on Bufang. These Heaven Chief were all immortal chefs. Among them, there were many monstrous geniuses. Some of them had persisted for a long time to take the second-grade Heaven Chief test, just to amaze the world. In the audience stand, many people noticed that the atmosphere wasn't right. They couldn't help but ask. No matter where Owner Boo goes, he will become the focus of others. As the focus, of course, some people will want to cover his sharpness. Gongshu Ban smiled. However, those who want to cover his sharpness will eventually be torn into pieces by Owner Boo's sharpness. Yeah. So, what happens next should be interesting. Facing the needle-like gazes around, of course, Bufang didn't mind. Actually, at this moment, he was a little excited. His eyes glanced at Realm Lord Dit, who was craning his neck to watch him curiously. That strange look made Realm Lord Dit's pores shrink. Bufang, this kid. What does he want to do? He retracted his gaze. Bufang's mind flickered. The fiery heart cabbages appeared in front of him, placed on the table. Reaching his hand, he brushed his waist. The white tiger heaven stove fell. It was as if a tiger's roar echoed, spreading and suppressing the other heaven chiefs' minds. The white tiger was arrogant, its pressure spreading everywhere. The dragon bone kitchen knife flashed with gold light. Bufang held it in his hand. Spinning around, he began to process the fiery heart cabbages. The outer layer of the fiery heart cabbages was peeled off, revealing a scarlet flame burning inside. Besides cabbages, he needed meat to make the dried pot. Among the meat here, Bufang chose the streaky pork of the 8 treasures pig. Dishes cooked with this kind of meat would have a rich aroma, which was especially tempting. He cut the streaky pork into slices, put some sauce, and began to soak the flavor. After that, he put the cabbages into a porcelain bowl, poured salt water, and began to wash them. After washing them, Bufang began to prepare the ingredient. He needed to prepare a lot of ingredient. The abyssal chili sauce was essential. The exploding flame pepper was cut into pieces, the purple garlic was diced, the scale-tail scallion, and the sun mother ginger were all prepared. After everything was prepared, Bufang flicked his fingers, flicking the white flame into the white tiger heaven stove. It made the flame flourish. The black turtle constellation wok was placed on the stove. Heating the wok. After pouring the life water, thick vitality filled the air. In the distance, many people smacked their lips when they smelled the vitality that was dispersing in the air. This wastrel, that's the life water. Realm Lord Dit beat his chest and stamped his feet. The life water was such a precious immortal material, and he used it to blanch water? In the black turtle constellation wok, the water began to boil. Bufang put the torn cabbages into the wok. When the fiery heart cabbages slightly changed color, Bufang used a basket to fish out all the cabbages, put them aside, and drain them. On the other side, in front of everyone's eyes, he poured out all the life water. Poured out, Realm Lord Dit's eyeballs were about to pop out. He actually wasted the life water like this. Did he know how precious the life water was? Of course, Bufang had no idea about this. After all, he had the source of the spring of life. To him, the life water was inexhaustible. Naturally, he couldn't understand Realm Lord Dit's heartache. Sizzle. He poured some hot oil into the black turtle constellation wok. When the oil was boiling hot, he added the exploding flame pepper and began to stir-fry. After stir-frying, he added the purple garlic and other ingredients. After stir-frying, he added the streaky pork. Sizzle. Sizzle. Steam rose, and a meaty aroma filled the air. The surrounding people all took in deep breath, solemnly looking at Bufang's position. Feeling the pressure, they began to cook the dishes in their hands seriously. Since they wanted to challenge Bufang, they naturally had to show the corresponding strength. Otherwise, they would become a joke. The streaky pork was stir-fried in the wok. After stir-frying, the aroma came out, and the meat slightly changed color. Then, good wine was poured in to enhance the flavor, making the aroma even more enticing. The drained fiery heart cabbages were put into the black turtle constellation wok. After stir-frying evenly, he added the abyssal chili sauce and stir-frying again. After stir-frying until a thick aroma came out, he added vinegar and other seasonings. Then, he turned off the heat, tossing the wok. The dish rolled in the wok, emitting a sparkling radiance. The silver lotus pot was prepared by Bufang. This time, Bufang prepared 3 lotus pots, pouring the stir-fried dish into them. The dried pot cabbages were cooked. Of course, Bufang still had some operations that he hadn't finished. Around him, the other contestants had also finished their dishes. Thunder rumbled unceasingly in the sky. All the contestants had begun to cross the tribulation. Many people found that Bufang's dish hadn't crossed the tribulation yet. Did the great demon make a mistake? It's possible. If it can't cross the tribulation, it means that this dish is unqualified. Our chance is here. The chance to crush the great demon is here. The contestants who were watching Bufang in the surroundings all looked excited. Crushing the great demon would make him famous in the Heaven Chief realm. This was full of temptation to anyone. Bufang took a dried pot, his mind flickered. A piece of life crystal fruit appeared in his hand. His mental force surged, and the powerful mental force in his head gushed out. It enveloped the life crystal fruit, carving the gourmet array inside. Shortly after, the gourmet array was carved. Then, he put the life crystal fruit into the black turtle constellation Wa. In just a moment, the life crystal fruit fused into it. The radiance of the array flashed for a while, then disappeared. Rumble! In the sky, the lightning punishment surged. Dark clouds rolled over. In just a moment, it covered the entire sky. Thunder boomed. Thick lightning bolts rolled out from the layers of clouds. The other lightning punishments were overshadowed. Instantly, the pressure of the lightning punishment scattered the tribulation clouds. Everybody was completely dumbfounded. The contestants, who thought they had hope, heard the sound of their hearts breaking. A single bolt of lightning punishment had dispersed their tribulation clouds. What did this mean? It meant that the quality of the great demon's dish had completely crushed them. Everybody took in a breath of cold air, feeling a wave of frustration. When the tribulation clouds scattered, it meant that they had completely failed the test. Because the dish hadn't crossed the tribulation yet at this moment, they didn't have the mood to compete with the great demon anymore. All they had left was the despair of being crushed by the great demon. Boom, 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 boom. 7 bolts of lightning punishment fell in a row. After Xiao Bai had resisted them, the contestants didn't have the mood to compete anymore. Only now did they understand how stupid it was to want to crush the great demon. The great demon was King Invincible. Boom! The last bolt of lightning punishment scattered. Bufang's vermilion robe fluttered. His playful eyes swept over, falling on Realm Lord Dit in the distance. He said softly, "Dried pot cabbage, done." Buzz, the silver pot in Bufang's hand emitted a strange wave of energy. That wave diffused. Everyone's faces changed. Realm Lord Dit's face turned red and his eyes widened. Bufang, this kid. Is he crazy? He actually cooked a perishing pot? Does he want to blow me up, so he can inherit my art of nudity? Chapter 1181. Realm Lord Dit once thought that Bufang wanted to blow him up so that he could inherit his art of nudity. Otherwise, how could Bufang really cook a great killing weapon like the perishing pot? How could Realm Lord Dit not know how terrible the power of the perishing pot was? Even a little saint would be killed by it. Now, was Bufang going to give him a perishing pot to eat? Realm Lord Dit's face turned red. He only asked Bufang to cook the perishing pot, not to destroy it. The people around them were frightened when they sensed the terrible power contained in the perishing pot in Bufang's hand. This was because they could sense an incomparably terrifying power within it. That power made them unable to summon the slightest intention to resist. They didn't know that Bufang had a great killing weapon like the perishing pot. Otherwise, they would have run away long ago instead of craning their necks to watch curiously. However, many people present knew the power of the perishing pot. They had all seen it with their own eyes. For example, Mengqi and Gongshu Ban. Mengqi rolled her eyes, but she was rolling her eyes at Realm Lord Dit. If you don't court death, you won't die. This was exactly what Realm Lord Dit meant. Why did he ask Bufang to cook a perishing pot? He knew that Bufang's perishing pot could wipe out a small world, but he still wanted to feel despair. Now, the perishing pot was enough to satisfy him. Gongshu Ban's body and mind were trembling. Bu. Owner Bu is crazy. Gongshu Ban's lips trembled slightly. Gongshu Ban's lips trembled slightly. He didn't believe it. He didn't dare to believe that Bufang really took out a perishing pot. Could it be? Gongshu Ban's pupils shrank as he looked at Bufang's cold face. Was Owner Bu angered by Realm Lord Dit's test question? Was he going to bomb everything? No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't figure out what was going on. Even Realm Lord Dit, who didn't believe that Bufang would take out a perishing pot, shivered. What if that thing was real? Then what about eating? Or not? The other participants didn't have as many emotions as World Lord Dit. The only emotion left in these people was despair. The fear and despair of being dominated by Bufang. A bolt of lightning smashed down, scattering their thunderclouds. The talents of these chefs were not bad, and some of them were monstrous geniuses. However, compared to Bufang, the so-called monstrous genius was simply too lacking. This could be seen from this competition. The quality of a dish and the level of the chef could be seen from the lightning punishment triggered by the dish. Apart from Bufang's dish, the other dishes that participated in the test attracted at most 2 lightning punishments. Merely 2 lightning punishments. He was too weak in front of Bufang. No wonder the tribulation clouds were scattered. The result was obvious. The great demon king had crushed everyone present, causing the other participants to lose the chance to advance to the next round. All of their previous ambitions were shattered by a bolt of lightning. The great demon was indeed the great demon. The people who participated in the examination couldn't help but sigh and sigh. Bufang didn't care about this at all. He held the dish in his hand and slowly walked down the stage. After a while, he walked down from the stage. There were 3 silver pots floating around his body, and one of them contained a terrifyingly powerful fluctuation. Bufang walked in front of the 3 judges. They were the 3 who were responsible for evaluating Bufang's test result. Realm Lord Dit, Pavilion Master Mengqi, and Gongshu Baiguang. Realm Lord Dit widened his eyes, watching Bufang place the dried pot with terrifying destructive energy fluctuations in front of him, his face bitter. Dried pot cabbage, please enjoy. Bufang clasped his hands, the corners of his mouth rising slightly as he gave Realm Lord Dit a meaningful look. Didn't you want to be naughty? Try being naughty again? The perishing pot you want is here. Please eat it while it's hot. The people around held their breath. They knew that with the great demon's cooking skills, it should be easy for him to advance to the 2nd grade Heaven Chief. But they still wanted to witness the birth of a miracle. There wasn't much difference between a 2nd grade Heaven Chief and an immortal chef. It was just a watershed in cooking skills. However, if a 2nd grade Heaven Chief took the 3rd grade Heaven Chief test, it would be a different story. The 3rd grade Heaven Chief's requirements were higher, and the conditions for success were more difficult. It was mainly based on the level of the completed dish. According to the rules, the dishes that an immortal chef could cook were from the 1st grade to the 3rd grade. Similarly, to become a 2nd grade Heaven Chief, the dishes had to be from the 4th grade to the 6th grade. As for becoming a 3rd grade immortal chef, the dishes he cooked had to be from grade 7 to grade 9 immortal dishes. As for the Qilin chef, the dishes had to be from the 10th grade to the true supreme grade. These were the divisions that the Heaven Chief realm had always used to classify the Heaven Chief's strength. The simplest way to determine the grade of an immortal dish was from the immortal energy it emitted. Basically, the number of strands of immortal energy represented the grade of the immortal dish. However, nothing was absolute, just like the perishing pot Bufang cooked today. The fluctuation of immortal energy wasn't strong, and it wasn't even obvious. But who could say that this dish wasn't necessarily a fourth-grade immortal dish? Swish. 3 dried pots were placed in front of the 3 judges. Then, steam began to rise from the pot, and the branches of the immortal tree began to sway. It shone brightly and shrouded the 3 dishes. Buzz, the spirit of the heaven tree, was becoming more and more real. It could be seen that the heaven tree was in a good state. The light from the branches of the heaven tree showed that Bufang's dish had reached the level of a second-grade heaven chief. Now it was time to taste the food. The 3 judges would taste it in person, which would make it more fair. Bufang stood calmly in the distance. Realm Lord Di Tai and the other 2 looked at each other, speechless. For a moment, the atmosphere became a little awkward. Everyone's eyes fell on them curiously. As the judges, they couldn't just not eat the food, taste it. My dried pot cabbage won't disappoint you. Isn't there someone who can't wait to taste the dried pot? Bufang said. Realm Lord Dit looked at the lotus pot in front of him, which was blooming with silver light. He was a little reluctant. City Lord Mingqi didn't say anything. She just gave Bufang a deep look. Then, she grabbed a pair of chopsticks on the table. With a gentle tap, she dived into the dried pot, picked up a glossy cabbage leaf, and put it into her mouth. This cabbage leaf was the result of Bufang blanching with the spring of life and stir-frying it. Crunch. The cabbage was boiling hot. As soon as it entered her mouth, the aroma of meat filled her mouth. The fiery heart cabbage tasted good. It was crispy, and the streaky meat of the 8 treasures pig complemented each other. City Lord Mingqi's eyes lit up. She didn't expect the dried pot cabbage to be so delicious. The aroma was strong and the texture was pure. This dried pot cabbage didn't disappoint her. She grabbed the chopsticks and stirred them in the dried pot. Under the dried pot, a white flame was burning, keeping the dish in a boiling state. This was actually the charm of the dried pot. As time passed, the aroma of the soup boiled under the roasting flame, causing the fragrance to burst out. She flipped the chopsticks, and the scalding dish underneath was flipped up. Steaming hot air surged up. There was a loud bang. The immortal energy of the dried pot cabbage, which wasn't obvious, suddenly spread out, turning into 6 long dragons that hovered above the cabbage. 6 strands of immortal energy. When everyone saw this, they were shocked and sucked in a breath of cold air. 6 strands of immortal energy meant that Bufang's dried pot cabbage was a 6th-grade immortal dish. The contestants were all dumbfounded. It was really infuriating to compare with others. While they were still working hard to cook a 4th-grade immortal dish, Bufang could easily cook a 6th-grade immortal dish. They weren't on the same level at all. They felt a little frustrated and helpless. Gongshu Baiguang was curious when he saw Mingqi flip 6 strands of immortal energy with just 1 chopstick. He also grabbed the chopsticks and flipped the dried pot cabbage. Sizzle. The soup underneath was boiling, but steam and immortal energy surged up at the same time. Immortal energy also gushed out. For a moment, the top of the dried pot was colorful and beautiful, attracting everyone's attention. Gongshu Baiguang picked up the cabbage and streaky pork and put them in his mouth. The crispy cabbage and the soft and fragrant streaky pork made Gongshu Baiguang nod with satisfaction. When Realm Lord Dit saw City Lord Mingqi and Gongshu Baiguang eating so happily, he couldn't help but have some thoughts. Maybe Bufang was just trying to scare him. How could he take out a great killing weapon like the perishing pot so easily? With this thought in mind, Realm Lord Dit's eyes became more playful. He remembered that when Bufang tricked the 2 little saint, wasn't it the same? Naughty Bufang, my little friend. Realm Lord Dit laughed. He pointed a finger at Bufang and shook it. He believed that the simple and upright owner wouldn't take out the terrifying perishing pot. So, Realm Lord Dit couldn't wait to reach out his chopsticks. Although his dried pot gave people a different feeling, but the tempting fragrance emitted from the dried pot made Realm Lord Dit a little unable to control himself. As long as he didn't die from the explosion, he would eat it. Grabbing the chopsticks, Realm Lord Dit reached for the dried pot. However, just as his chopsticks were about to fall, Realm Lord Dit suddenly raised his head and saw Bufang's interested gaze. His scalp went numb. However, he didn't hesitate for too long. He picked up a piece of streaky pork, which was soft and fragrant. Realm Lord Dit's eyes suddenly lit up. Delicious! Delicious! Realm Lord Dit continued to pick up the meat with his chopsticks. The perishing pot didn't move, which made Realm Lord Dit's tense heart calm down. How could Bufang be the kind of person who didn't know his limits? Realm Lord Dit ate happily. Suddenly, the corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. He looked at Realm Lord Dit curiously. Although he didn't draw the exploding gourmet array in the perishing pot, Bufang had drawn the imprison array in it. Of course, the dried pot wasn't the best carrier for the imprison array, but it could still play a little role. So, under everyone's puzzled eyes, Bufang raised his palm. Bufang's action touched everyone's heart. Realm Lord Dit's body froze, and he suddenly had a feeling of uneasiness. Subconsciously, he looked at Bufang, who seemed to have a playful smile on his paralyzed face. Damn it! Imprison! Bufang snapped his fingers, his face expressionless. As his voice faded, the sound of his fingers snapping was crisp and sweet. Everyone was dumbfounded. The next moment, boom! The perishing pot in front of Realm Lord Dit suddenly burst into a dazzling white light. This feeling City Lord Mingqi and Gongshu Baiguang's mouths twitched, and their figures instantly fled far away. They avoided the place where Baiguang shone. Realm Lord Dit couldn't dodge at all. He was directly blinded by Baiguang's light and shrouded in it. When Baiguang dispersed, Realm Lord Dit's figure appeared. There was no earth-shattering explosion, no terrifying destructive fluctuations. That Baiguang was like a flash in the pan, and it didn't change anything. Realm Lord Dit pursed his lips, straightened his neck, and raised his hand, grabbing the chopsticks. The chopsticks were holding a piece of fragrant and hot streaky pork, and he was about to put it into his mouth. There was even a glistening oil flowing on the meat, and the fragrance filled the air. The delicacy was right in front of him, but Realm Lord Dit couldn't move. He could only smell the fragrance of the meat, which kept drilling into his nostrils and teasing him. His body couldn't move at all, and he was completely frozen on the spot, as if he was petrified. What happened? Why didn't the Realm Lord eat the meat? The gourmet array, imprison. Looking at the situation, it should have restricted his movements. Looking at Realm Lord Dit's funny actions, Bufang couldn't help but smile. Eat, Realm Lord. Eat, Bufang said. Realm Lord Dit's eyes turned, and he maintained his posture. He wanted to move, but he couldn't. He could only curse in his heart. He finally understood that he was wrong. He once thought that Bufang wanted to kill him, but that wasn't the case. Bufang wanted to suffocate him to death, so that he could inherit his naked art. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.